All stories could be completely made up, and we have no way to confirm that. Any and all names mentioned in the show are most likely fake. We at Campfire Moto Stories are not journalists and should not be considered as much. If you're offended by anything said or shown in this episode, we don't care, but we encourage you to voice your opinion so we can laugh at the fact that you can't control your emotions. This program contains full language, and I recommend no one to watch or listen to this.
The views and opinions expressed in the program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the sponsor, any advertisers, or the sponsor's affiliates, employees, or partners.
Coming to you live from the Claremont Lounge in Atlanta, Georgia, it's Campfire Moto Stories.
Hey everyone, welcome to Campfire Moto Stories. I'm Anthony Bennett, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today for our live show. This YouTube show / podcast is all about sharing amazing motorcycle stories from everyday riders like you. Whether it's an epic ride, a funny mishap, or an unforgettable adventure, we want to hear it all. Today, we have some fantastic guests in the studio who we'll introduce in just a moment, where we'll dive into their riding stories. Plus, we have exciting segments lined up, including pre-recorded interviews, Billy's tech tips, spotlight a stolen bike, and stories sent in by you through the website and or phone line. At 8:30 sharp, we'll open the phone lines and give our live viewers a chance to call in and share their own motorcycle stories. Lastly, you'll get to hear an awesome story from my 5-year-old son about riding. May or may not be completely made up. But hey, a 5-year-old can tell a great story, so can you. Don't forget, you can earn entries into our YZ250 giveaway by participating in the show. Check out CampfireMotoStories.com for all the official rules, and by participating in any way, shape, or form, you indicate that you've read the official rules and agree to our terms and condition. Let's get it started.
They had a meeting.
Another lap around the wall, another request, another call. All I hear is need. I can't reply to all. I feel the strain, I fall behind. I sacrifice my precious time. All I ever get is never really mine. Money versus true love. Versus something real. Now I feel.
Hey, welcome to Campfire Moto Stories. I got my good buddy Frank Victorine in studio with me today. Say hey, Frank.
Hey guys, how are you?
Frank is a vast knowledge of just motorcycle information. If I could compare you to somebody, and I hope this doesn't insult you, I would say you're like the Sheldon Cooper of motorcycles to me.
It's probably pretty close, you know.
I remember the first time meeting with you and getting to talk with you, I was like, this dude has forgotten twice as much stuff as I know and will ever know. Like, you can just tell while talking with you, you've got so much awesome, cool knowledge, you know? So I'm happy to have you in the studio, man.
Cool, man. Thanks.
And, you know, I always like to start off with, like, a little icebreaker thing. And 2 days ago, I asked you, like, kind of jokingly, I was like, hey, do you want any beer? Do you want any liquor? Do you want some cocaine? And I didn't hear back from you. And then I texted you again today, and I was like, hey, do you want any beer or anything to drink? And you said just Coke. And I was like, oh, God. So I went to Fulton Industrial, and my straw dropped. Oh, there you go.
Boy.
So there's
yeah.
there. So I mean, I had to go through a lot
Yeah.
to get you this, but you
that's
know.
crazy. Yeah. I just you know, if my wife ever sees this, I wonder what she would actually think of that, you know, because you're really talking about someone that doesn't smoke. I don't drink. I don't, you know, that would be a complete shock to her. I'm certain this would be an amazing experience.
It wouldn't. Hey, look, the stuff nowadays is terrible. It's just baking soda, people. It is not actual cocaine. Don't anybody freak out.
So don't actually try that at home.
I mean, you could. It's just baking
well,
soda.
Really, you know, cocaine was really the drug of the late 70s, early 80s, you know, and now...
Your heyday of racing, right?
I did a lot of moto in the 80s and 90s, that's for sure. You know, I was born in the early 70s, you know, to kind of put it in perspective. Been around motorcycles just a million years, you know. I've just... So maybe I could start by just kind of giving folks an overarching idea of, you know, where I came from, who I am. I was born in Nevada. Started racing motocross when I was 13 years old. You know, before that I raced BMX. I retired in 31. I think it was before I was 32. Had raced basically every weekend of my life, you know, running moto. You know, at the age of 20, I don't think that there would have been any way that someone could have convinced me that I was not going to be the next fastest rider in the world. You know, I was just set on it.
Yeah,
you know,
didn't we all think that at some point?
We all did. You know, and when I look at, you know, you can look at whatever era of rider, but you know, I don't feel like the other guys put in more effort than I did. You know, unfortunately, there's a talent thing. You know, that really, when you even look at like Supercross level, you know, you're looking at the, you know, the top 1% of the most talented riders in the world, and not everyone has that 1%, regardless of how much effort you put into it, regardless of how much you want it. You know, that and if you can stay away from the injuries, you know, that there's only a select few that really have that level of God-gifted talent, you know, and I still remember when McGrath, when I had worked for Motorcycle Mechanics Institute, and he had come down and they had done a thing on him, and then after that, you know, some of the managers came and were like, McGrath doesn't seem like he's got anything. It's like, why aren't you killing that guy? And it's like, because he's, you know, at the time, you know, was you know, the most respected and had won more championships than anyone, basically. You know, and then Ricky came. Then there was Ricky. You know, which man, I saw Ricky from I still remember at the World Minis where Ricky was on a KX80 running the Expert 80 class and lapped everyone. I remember thinking, this kid might just make it. That's what I thought. I thought this kid might actually make it. And you look at, you know, and it was something like 10 years later, you know, maybe even longer than that. You know, he's sitting at the autograph booth with Suzuki, you know, and it's just like, and it's like crazy, you know, but he was one of the ones, you know, and Ricky had everything really right. You know, he put all he had tremendous discipline. He had the right, he was the right size. You know, he wasn't a 230-pound guy, you know, because the reality is those guys just don't, they're not fast. The vast majority of them. And he had and he was smart, and he was just exceptionally talented, you know. Probably one of the smartest riders that I've seen, really.
Sorry, so one of my buddies said the audio is kind of dodgy, so I'm trying to fix that
Oh,
while
gotcha.
we're talking.
Maybe I can move my microphone in just a little bit and see
Usually
if
when they're saying like that, it's almost more like the sampling rate or something like that.
Oh, gotcha.
So I've messed with some of that stuff, so I'm just going to have to, it's better now. What's the YouTube side of it when it's live is a little bit more difficult with this stuff, but the audio that I get from this that I put into the podcast systems usually sounds excellent. So I won't worry about it too much.
So back on kind of like that overarching theme, spent a lot of years racing moto, love motorcycles, you know, love the industry.
Yeah.
Just like most folks that are into motorcycles, I mean, really what's cooler than moto, you know? Not, you know, for the average 20-year-old that I would think would consider themselves to be an athlete, there's just not a lot of cooler stuff out there than that, you know? From there, I went to MMI as a student. I had then went to work for numerous dealerships. They had brought me back in as an instructor.
At MMI, right?
At MMI.
And I thought I saw as well you were at UTI at some point, right?
So what had happened in the year 1998, and this goes back a long ways, that UTI bought out MMI.
Oh, I didn't.
And then
that.
it became UTI, and the MMI was basically just a campus of that larger organization. Okay. Is what had actually transpired there, you know. So I saw MMI go from 800 students, and I say 800. That's probably a highball number. More like 640 students. I'm just trying to think actual student count that I remember back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
All the way to 3,000 students. So I saw that place just completely blow up with marketing. You know, so
and that was a big part of it. Then is I guess the marketing.
Yep.
I mean, they were big in marketing with Supercross. You'd see a lot of commercials and things like that.
Yep.
And the same thing with the military. You notice that happens a lot as well. It's a lot of the same, you know, type of mindset people.
Well,
they're willing to get huck a big old jump on a dirt bike. They're dumb enough to, you know,
have bullet shot.
I'm kidding. I'm not calling anybody who goes to the service dumb.
I tried to go in. They kind of wouldn't take me because of all my injuries I had
that's
before I
probably
was
true.
18.
Yeah, right.
What year did you end up going to the MMI as an instructor then?
So, 2000 and 1997.
Okay.
1997, and I worked there to 2004. And that what had happened is I was promoted. I managed my own department. I ran FAST, which was called Factory Authorized Suzuki Training.
Oh, okay.
And I
have heard that.
Yep, and I helped develop that original program with Suzuki Motor Corp. And then Jim Kirkland, which basically was the number 2 guy at Suzuki, had hired me to work for Suzuki Motor Corporation. So I had packed up all my shit and had sold everything and moved to to what I thought was an opportunity of a lifetime to work for one of the large corporations. And it's like at the time, man, I would have done just about anything to have gotten to that point. So it was so I was very thankful. And then from there, so originally I wasn't even in training. I was a quality analyst, and we can talk about some of those things and some of the trends and and it just turns out that they identified fairly early that I was pretty good at data, I was pretty good at being able to figure out trends in things, and it's like, you're a data analyst. Go find problems, and and basically what that role was is that I looked at what were the top, let's say, 100 problems that Suzuki was having with the product line. What was their, are they safety related? Are they, what sort of quadrant what sort of threat are they for the company, and then report those things to Japanese, to the SMC company, which was, there was the American company, and then there was SMC, which was Suzuki of Japan, and that they were set up as separate corporations, even though obviously one owned the other.
Yeah.
Right. And the Americans did not own the Japanese.
So was that MMI that was like in Florida? Then came to Atlanta.
So I worked in the Arizona location, which was the primary location. So the Atlanta or the Florida location was always considered kind of secondary. That was never like the home campus, so to speak. Everything actually was the main campuses were all in Arizona.
Interesting. I guess just me being from Florida, that's the main one that I knew of.
Yeah, I mean, it was still the largest motorsports technical school in the world. It was still, there was nowhere bigger in the whole world than that place.
So I'm curious for this, and I really hope this doesn't piss off somebody at MMI somehow.
No, it might.
But,
and I probably know a lot of the clowns, so go ahead.
So
and
we would get a lot of people that would come from, because I was a service manager. That's when you'd met me.
Sure.
And we'd have people come in, we'd interview and talk with them, and you're like, I wouldn't let this dude touch my lawnmower.
Yeah.
And then there's other guys who interviewed real well, and you'd ask them questions, and they'd know it. And I would do a final test, and I would just say, okay, you just got out of MMI 6 months ago. Change this tire for me.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how to do that.
So
and I'm like, you just spent, how much was it? 30, 40?
Yeah, $40,000.
And you can't change a tire?
That's right. In at least 2 years. When you look at, and this is even back a number of years ago, when you look at the price they were charging for a 2-year vocational certificate, in a lot of places you could pick up a 4-year degree for less money that would have a whole lot more street value than that had. It just happened to be the curb appeal. So I was a part of their PAC advisory committee for over 10 years from the corporate side. So in other words, after I had left there, they would still fly me in once or twice a year and discuss some of the problems they were having. I wasn't their friend, right?
Oh.
So it was one of those deals where, like, say, for example, Jim Kirkland, which was number 2 guy at Suzuki, knowing that I worked for him, knew that I was very aware of some of the problems that they had. I was it was not a discussion. Frank Victorine was showing up at your PAC advisory committee, and then and this is what I would do. I wouldn't show up at the day of the meeting because they spend, the last 2 or 3 days cleaning everything up, getting everything perfect. I showed up 2 to 3 days early. And then I went out there, and so, for example, what I would do, the FAST program, which at one point I managed and then was promoted to the corporate side, what I would do is show up 3 days early, and they'd be like, Frank's here. Why is Frank here?
Oh, shit.
Oh, shit. Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And then what I would do is I'd walk around and I'd take photos of all the problems that I saw. It's like, why is that clip not on that? Why is that? And I'd check torque on axle bolts and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I would do is send them a detailed report, and I would ask them a simple question. It's like, why is the work not performed correctly? These guys have already spent 1 year and 6 months. These are basic tasks, and that when I go out and look at the bikes that are obviously put back together, why is it not right? That's one of the things I would do to them because let me just give you some. So MMI can kiss my ass. MMI kiss my ass, right? You know who I am, right?
I went down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, this is what I see, that the students would spend somewhere in the neighborhood of, we'll say $30,000 to $40,000, and this was 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And that the vast majority of the folks would not be successful at their job.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the government had jumped in, and that they have a placement rate of 75%. They were padding the books. In other words, they were placing people that really weren't placed long-term as showing them as placed, because then they can get all the government funding. And that they were put on probation. And that, as a matter of fact, there have been some heavy things that have occurred from a marketing standpoint where the government stepped in and been like, you can't do this anymore. You are bad people, basically. And that then it ended up hurting the way they can market, and it ended up hurting the amount of money that they can get into the company. And then what's happened is they've closed down a large percentage of their of their courses because of the conduct that they had in previous years. So so this is what I'll say, that I always felt extremely empathetic towards the person that would, because think about what you have to do. You have to sell the things that you own. You have to go move to another state that your wife's probably not thrilled about. You basically have to completely change your life to run down this path. So the people that do this, the people that are willing to give all that up because they want to be a part of the industry and they think it's cool, those people are invested. They want to do it.
Yeah.
So the fact that I see that they can't do it or aren't successful at it, it's like, guys, there's a problem here.
Yeah.
And it really turns out that it's twofold. That there was no entrance exams, no mechanical aptitude exams.
Yeah.
That really what they wanted was warm bodies, and that anyone that was able to repay the debt, or that anyone that was, let's say, for example, ex-military, was anywhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 60%. So I've trained I've trained a lot of
from the GI bill.
Thousands and thousands of military. I've done a lot of military training, but they still don't have any of the mechanical aptitude tests. None of the things to actually. So there's a percentage of these people that just do not have the God-gifted aptitude that it takes to be able to do that kind of work.
Yeah.
And even though they can pass all the written tests and do all the stuff, they're just never going to make good mechanics.
Yeah.
And
do me this. Keep talking.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to take care of something real quick.
Yep.
So you keep talking because I can hear you.
Okay. And yeah. So looking at MMI, yes, I was part of the PAC advisory committee, and that one of the goals that I had was to make sure that the people that were leaving that institution were put in a position that they could actually be successful. So now that we've talked about MMI a little bit, we can circle back to some other topics. So I work for Suzuki Motor Corporation for somewhere in the neighborhood of about 12 years. In 2015, our Marietta office here in Georgia had went from 40 employees to 4. And I was the last employee at that location. And I got a call from my manager at the time, which was Doug McIntyre, which actually had worked for Honda Motor Corporation for almost 30 years in the training department. But that's a different topic. You're back. Okay. And
Yes, and I could hear everything.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Holy
no,
crap, that was
no.
wild.
no, you're fine.
So, I know I kind of left you hanging there.
Yeah,
Sorry to
so-
do that. All right.
So Doug McIntyre, training department. So how I had left from Suzuki, because I'd still be working for Suzuki today, most likely, because the reality is I like the product, I like the people, I love Japanese. That I got a phone call and I don't remember now if it was late 2014 or early 2015. It's just been too many years now, but it was somewhere in that time frame. And I got a phone call, and it was, "Hey, Frank, what do you think about the idea of moving back to California?"
Oh, jeez.
Right? But you got to realize the climate. We went from 40 employees, there were 4 left. There were 4. And we can talk about, this was the 2008 financial
crisis.
Suzuki
Which is
went,
right around the time that we had met. It was
yeah,
07, 08.
Suzuki had went from selling 230,000 units per year to 28,000 units. And they had said, and they had basically, they had let a lot of people go just to keep the U.S. market afloat, right? That's what happened. And
it was definitely before 2016, because I'm just looking at some of our messages I've sent.
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
like,
So 2016.
Trying to see if I could
Yeah.
get a date,
No, man.
'cause you told me
so
you're at
2016.
Yamaha.
No, that's cool. So 2016, I had jumped ship and went to work for Yamaha. Is what had happened.
Yeah.
But the reason,
And it was kind of out of no choice. I mean, it was
the
everything
choice
was
was,
closing down.
the average house in Southern California, you could buy a 2-bedroom shack that was 50 years old for $500,000.
Yeah.
Between,
Basically this studio that would be like a $500,000.
No, this would be $1 million.
Oh.
Just crazy, just
Yeah.
and there was no pay difference.
Yeah.
So I made the same money there as I made here, and so Doug McIntyre, presents me with this, and he's like, "What do you think about moving to California?" And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh fuck," right? And
I'm good.
And no, so I was
I'll stay. That's
yeah,
what I meant.
yeah. Well, no, I didn't even say, the political world. You just have to be really careful about what you say, how because everything can have tremendous ramifications to your, to things.
Oh yeah.
And I was real honest with him. I'm like, look, if I move back to California, it's financial suicide. Here are the prices of housing. And do I have to do it? And he's like, no, it's just, we're just getting some feelers out there to see how things are. And then about 3 months later, I get another phone call from Mr. Doug. Doug virtually never called me. "Hey, Frank, I think it would be a real good idea if you moved to California." And I knew, right? When you get that tone,
Yeah.
you're out of time.
Yeah.
I had known for 25 years, maybe 30 years, that was the manager over the training department. I had a job in 2 weeks.
Oh, at Yamaha.
Yeah, and so
wait,
yeah.
does he have a son named?
I have no idea. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
There's a family that I know at Yamaha, and he's got 2 sons. I hadn't seen the sons.
Oh,
in a
he
long
does
time.
have 2 sons.
And
It's got to be the
he
same
lives.
dude. Yeah, he's not
half a
too
mile
far
from here.
Yeah, he's not too far from here.
Yep, I bought something from him not too long ago, I
yeah.
ran into him a few times.
Yeah,
when I've gone
he
to
probably stole it.
Yamaha.
But that's a different topic.
Oh shit! Jeez. Maybe we won't go down that road.
Yeah, he probably did.
I think it was like an old YZ125, like a '97. Anyways, we're not going to go down that path.
Yeah, we're just not. They're when you're in this and know all the people, there are. Man, I know a lot of things about a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. And I know the good ones from the bad ones for the most part.
Yeah.
Where's the VIN on that bike? Would be my first question. But anyhow, we'll just get the VIN on that. Run that VIN.
So
Might not be what you think. Be prepared to give that back to some people.
I had like a planned path with the show, and we've gone off the rails on
Oh
that
yeah,
a
well
little
there's
bit,
just
which
so
I'm
much.
lo-
There's
yeah,
so much.
I'm not going to try to hold you back as much
No,
as I can.
man,
I feel
there's
like it'd
just
be better to just go.
well, and I'm just doing a basic intro, and these are just some of the things that have come up as a result of that. You know, so I jumped ship. I went to Yamaha. They had me over the motorsports division for about 3 years. Actually, we did all product lines. They had asked me to move to the boat division. So they had broken up CTG, which is the custom training group. Then they had reassigned everyone, which is typical corporate shit. I mean, I'd been through so many, shakeups.
Restructurings.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, man. And so they had asked me to take over boat product, and I'm like, boats? Like the water? That's my right. You can't say any
I'm a
of that.
motorcycle guy.
I'm a motorsport. So I
Yeah.
picked it up. I built them 5 courses at the. Did not love that group of people. The motorsports group and the boat group, very different types of people. Did not love the group of people. So at the first part of 2019, I told them at the end of the year I was going to quit. I'm going to quit, guys, and then I'm going to go open up my own little dealership. I'm going to go try to run my own show, which is exactly what I've done.
Yeah.
It hasn't made shit for money. It really hasn't. I work myself to death, and there's no money in it, but that's the motorsports. But, that's one of those things that I'd never done, and I wanted to go do it. So right now I'm set up as a Teo dealer, and I sell some of the Chinese stuff, and I do a lot of service work.
Yeah, where are you set up out of?
Rock Springs. So that's there's a whole. It's more north, and there's a reason that I was going to buy a 1 acre lot of land. I was going to build a 4,000 square foot building on it in Emerson. I had all this lined up before I had quit. The zoning wasn't 100% right. They ended up running me through 6 months of rezoning, and then they turned it and then they basically said no at the end of it, and they had it was horrible. So I had bought the land, right? So I was financially committed to it. I ended up selling it and making money on the land.
I was going to say, with the way things probably worked out.
Just the way it worked out,
you
it worked out
probably
okay. It
Yep.
didn't work out nearly as good as I would have wanted it
Yeah.
to. And it turned out that the mayor lived on that street and didn't want my business with motorcycles on his fucking street. I swear to God, that's what actually happened. So I moved it north. But and then we had the coronavirus. We had all sorts of,
Chaos,
life.
yeah.
I mean, what do you do? I couldn't have predicted any of those things.
Nobody could have.
The little business that I set up still has managed to make money. It hasn't been underwater. I haven't lost anything doing it. I sure as hell have not made the money that I made from my corporate gig.
You're probably happier though.
My wife seems to think that I'm happier overall. I've spent so many years dealing with those people.
Yeah.
Doing and you have to realize that when you get to these companies, especially the motorsports companies, everyone wants in. Everyone wants a job. Everyone, and if they get a job, they want to be president. They have ambition like you would not believe. The janitor wants to be the president. And you just have to realize that is the dichotomy of people that you're working with. And it can be a vicious group just due to how capitalistic, how ambitious, that group, and people, like if you think about the interview topic that you made, people will say fucking anything to get a job.
I mean, it's the same thing like when we'd ask the people the MMI questions, and then it seemed like they got it. Change a tire, and then you're like, oh, no,
that shit pissed me off so bad. It to see that the poor guy would sell everything he has, move to a different state, spend 2 years in his $40,000 in debt, and he can't change a tire. Just to let you know, from a corporate, I'm pissed.
And also,
it
was crazy too. Like, I'd ask. There was a good friend of mine who came, and he was working with me at Freedom.
Yeah.
And he came from there, and I'd be like, "Hey, do this," and it's like, "Oh yeah, I knew. I've done that. Like, they showed me that." And then he'd start to do it, and it would just go to shit because it like splitting the cases on a dirt bike, because the cases that they gave to split had been split and redone hundreds of times. It's not a real case where it's actually sealed together, and you have to do things the right way to split it.
And
there's a
it's
technique to it.
There's a lot to it, and there's a lot of technology, and there's a lot of detail, and there's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into being a good mechanic. And one of the biggest problems that MMI has is that you cannot have one instructor, 25 to 30 students, and expect to have any sort of positive outcome for the vast majority of people. You don't have enough product, you don't have enough time in the day, you don't have enough attention that you can give each person, and that you can only PowerPoint something so much.
Yeah.
And we can go deep into ideology of things that I understand and believe about training, because the truth is that I've spent the vast majority of my life training technicians, and I really feel like I understand their mindset. I understand their difficulties in learning. I understand, all of it, and a lot of instructors don't necessarily do students, and I don't even really like the word student, more like participant, because student kind of implies some social hierarchy, some ranking, and I just don't like it.
Yeah,
I just don't
that
like
makes sense.
I just don't like it. Because you get a lot of instructors that are ultimately that I really boil instructors down into a couple of groups, that you're there to help, or you're typically there to inflate your ego, and that once you divide it and you look at it for what it might actually be, it's pretty easy to figure it out. So is this guy just here to collect a paycheck? Is he here to make himself feel smart, or is he here to help people? Which check mark?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, that's interesting, because
yeah.
I've never thought about it that way, but
yeah.
And you can boil that down to the technicians that I've worked with over the years too, because there's plenty of guys that are just great guys, and they're there more to help, and they get a good feeling out of helping. I mean, Billy Eisenhower's a good example.
Yeah,
of
I know
that.
Billy.
Yeah.
We almost hired Billy for Yamaha. I pushed for him.
Yeah.
We just couldn't get him in.
I mean, I walked into the shop the other day, said hey to him. My puppy and I walked in and went to pick up a part, and he is helping a guy pull a motor out of
just
something.
So you know, I would have turned Billy into an exceptional instructor.
He would have been great.
So one of the roles that I had before I took a position at Suzuki is I did all the new hires. So I was the intermediate trainer to show these guys policies, practices, methodology of how to be a good instructor. And most of them spent 4 to 6 weeks with me personally, all their new hire instructors at one point. So and it's not what you think, it's just be yourself, be honest, be helpful. Make sure, and if you don't know something, admit it.
Oh,
and that
God,
no
yes.
one.
I don't understand why people don't do that. It's so simple to just be like, I don't know.
And to also realize this: anytime you try to learn something new, it's difficult, and that you have to have some empathy for fucking people, and that realize that if you're trying to learn this new language, or you're trying to learn this new skill set that you've ever seen, it's hard.
Yeah.
And you feel like a fucking idiot. You're afraid to ask questions because you don't want the other guy to think you're an idiot. And that that if you don't set the right environment, you can really create a situation where you can't get 100% out of that person. And ideally, your goal is to motivate people and to get as much out of them and to be as helpful as you can. And that you really got to understand people. You have to be empathetic, and that you have to realize how difficult their struggle is. And to realize that we all have struggle. None of us are different. And that you're ultimately, that one, you understand that, and you're actually there to help.
Yeah.
And it's like, unfortunately, when I get my, marker out and start checking instructors, it's like, I'd fire him. He's fired.
So what would you tell the 10-year-old kid right now that wants to be a motorcycle mechanic?
Find another career.
Shit.
I would tell him to go find another career.
Okay, he's like you. That was like, I'm going in the motorcycle, like me,
Yeah,
you
man.
know.
Yeah, man.
But what would it be the best thing? Go be a porter. Go try to find a technician
go to college.
That you can
find something. So the problem with the motorsports industry, this. You spent that there's no fucking money in it. That all the good talent is going to leave to other things, and that you end up with a low wage, and it's not, unless if you're really fortunate and you happen to get a job from the corporate standpoint, you're going to be working for basically mom and pop shops for the rest of your life, or corporations that are extremely cutthroat and don't care anything about you as a human being.
It is wild how so many shops have gone away from the mom and pop, and it is a lot more corporate structure. And there's definitely pros and cons to it. I mean, my dad needed 2 years till he retired. He went to Mountain Motorsports as a parts manager for 2 years just to kind of pass the time. And he was telling me, he's like, there's actually 401ks, there's health, there is some positives to it, but it is a little more cutthroat for sure.
It's definitely, definitely cutthroat, definitely.
Yeah, that's kind of funny to hear.
And take the corporate side, it's 100-fold.
Yeah.
It's 100-fold. The people still at the shop level are mostly okay people.
Yeah.
Corporate level, man, you know, the longer that I was in it, the further I wanted out of the politics. The further that and there was a reason that I stayed in training. There was a reason. There were reasons that the whole and the real purpose was I don't want your dirty business. I don't want it. I just want to help people if I can, right? You know, from a very human standpoint, I'd like to get up in the morning and really feel like I have done something to contribute that is good.
Well, I just saw a little note on here of something that I feel you contributed that was really cool that I wanted to talk about to me.
Sure.
And that was shortly after we met. And actually, we're going to get into that first before we get into the Rome
and we can just run through a whole bunch of bullet point stuff. Please do.
Freedom Power Sports, when I was working there in the service department, you'd come in. I want to say either you came in randomly and was like, you guys have this bike. I need to check these things out because there might be an issue. Or it was because there was that GSXR with the snap frame, and there was that frame recall thing that came out.
It was probably that.
So, I like it was a little fuzzy of which one it was because I know you came in so many different times.
And I probably wasn't real, and I was at the point where I probably couldn't talk about what was actually going on there, and that I know a lot about that. So GSXR 1000 frame recall 2006 to 2008 from memory.
Yes, that's right.
I was the lead quality analyst at that time. I was doing reports. I wasn't even working in training. I was doing reports for Suzuki, and that we had frames that were breaking, and that from everything that we saw, and by the way, that turned into a class action lawsuit. That Suzuki of America never got sued. SMC got sued, Suzuki of Japan.
Oh, okay.
And they didn't even bother with us. So here's what ended up happening.
Because they are actually made in Japan, too. Like, it's not like
I'm sure there were
the four-wheelers that were made in Rome and all that other stuff. So.
You have to realize that in these corporations that one of the largest divisions is the legal division. Behind glass doors, it's like, who are those seas of people? Oh, that's our mediation department.
Yeah.
Right?
I believe it.
Oh, yeah. No, it's especially the motorsports, very litigious, very legal. Yeah. All the words, all the stuff, very specific a lot of times. but that GSXR was headed towards a class action lawsuit that we didn't know at the time. That we had GSXR frames that were breaking and that we didn't understand why at the time. And that from all the data that we had saw, that we saw impact damage to the front wheel. We had saw crash damage, and that we had saw no incidents where these frames had broken, where we could not pinpoint prior impact of some point. It's the way it looked. So, so here's the rule. Was the rule? It got changed. The rule was we never report crash damage. You don't report crash damage to the factory, right? If something's crashed...
Well, yeah, because that will change what happens to the structure of the machine.
Well, you have to think about what happens from a reporting standpoint. There are only so many people. There are only so many resources. You have to put the focus on where the problems actually exist.
Okay.
That part of my goal was to pinpoint exactly where the problems occur, why they occur, and how they occur, and then if we find something where it was abuse or an aftermarket part caused a failure, that never gets reported.
Yeah.
Because there is no countermeasure. That's the Japanese term for the fix. There is no countermeasure for someone's aftermarket crap, for example. So that never gets reported. So what had happened with the GSXR 1000 recall, due to the fact that we had zero incidents that we could see of some sort of actual defect,
Yeah.
we basically swept it under the rug and called it crash damage and never reported it to SMC. And then something...
And is that because, I mean, when these would snap, it would crash, and so it looked like it was like an impact or something else could have caused it. And let's be real, most of your GSXR owners are going to be a little...
Or it gets deeper.
Yeah, they're going to go a little crazy sometimes.
But that's what it has. So then what had occurred, that there were enough of these out, that these large firms will look for this kind of shit. They had gathered all these people, and I never even got the name of the firm, right? But one of the big ones had gathered all these people together, submitted this under a class action lawsuit against SMC. And I don't know why it wasn't hit here, but I can tell you that the relative dollar amount, the dollar amount that was pending was more money than we had ever made in the GSXR product line in its history.
Jeez.
So we're not right? Huge flags. Never got reported. Yeah. Okay. You want to know who was the guy that was responsible for the reports? This guy. Oh, my. This was one of the reasons that I went to training and never came back, honestly. Yeah. This was, and there were some others. Like the type of fire, you don't want to know. I mean, horrible, horrible stuff. So we had started doing some testing on it. And that this is what all the testing had shown. That you had to take a GSXR 1000. They picked it up from 1 foot off the ground, smacked the front end. Not once. I'm trying to remember the exact number, and I may get the number off. No one has it anyways, but I'm thinking it was 4,700 times. So you take the bike, you do this,
4,700 times, yeah.
And at some point, you will fatigue it to the point that it fails. And here was the other part that was so interesting. The only country in the whole world that had any significant incidents, anything that's a recall is 0.03% failure rate, was the U.S. No one ever even hit the numbers anywhere in the world. The fucking American riders did, though, and they're.
I mean, it almost kind of seemed like, to me, it seemed more like it was more the people, but
well, you know, so every year of GSXR, you know, the goal is always so hard that, and a normal combustion engine can produce roughly, and this is with the most advanced engine design, about 128% volumetric efficiency. So if you take the displacement, the CFM, and the VE, I can calculate how much horsepower an engine will make, like right now. Like real engineering numbers, right? So
I actually remember us talking about that back then.
Yeah, so you can't really, these motors, you couldn't really make them faster. You could turn them more RPM.
Yeah.
You could make the pumps bigger. You could make them larger in displacement. So these engines are really at a point where you couldn't squeeze a whole lot more out of them and keep the reliability where it's at. So what do? You make the bikes smaller. You make the bikes lighter. And every year it turned into this race. How do we reduce the friction? How do we reduce the size of the bike? How do we make it lighter? And at some point, you get it a little too light.
Yeah.
So the thing is that the Japanese never tested this product in this way because they didn't know the Americans were doing this. They didn't understand the American riders. And when they saw what they were doing, they're like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
So it changed an entire testing protocol on how how the Japanese test frames now.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there so that's what had occurred, and that so on one side, we didn't understand the customer. They were doing things that were way outside of not for Americans, but normal for the world.
Yeah.
And that this failure was a failure that hit itself in a way that we never reported it.
Yeah.
Dude.
And
dirty,
I remember the
man.
one that
It
was sitting
dirty, man.
in our shop on the crate. it came in, like the recall came out, you came to us, I think, the day it came out.
Yeah, probably did.
There was this dye stuff that you had to do.
Dye penetrant.
Yeah, we went to the whole testing with it. I think you either called us or called my cell and was like, I'm coming. Do you have this bike? Or do you have one on the showroom? I'm there. And like 30 minutes later, you were there. Yeah. And then we went through the whole thing, and I said, well, what about that bike over there that was, the frame snapped where the brace was being put in? And you go, no, that guy hit a freaking wall at 120. Like, no, that isn't part of the recall.
And it may have been. And at that time, I may not have had all the clarity that we had.
I remember you saying, well, and of course, maybe you couldn't tell me at that time, but
anything.
I do remember you being like, no, that is not part. And you sounded very convincing. So.
I probably wouldn't have lied to you. I probably just would not have said anything.
No, you straight up said, like, no, we've done – I think you actually had the police reports on that particular one.
Oh,
and
we
it
probably
was
did.
like, no, this guy crashed, it hit a wall, and it just happened to snap in the same spot because obviously it's
the
a point
number of
weakness.
police officers that would call me on a weekly basis and ask me to run some report just to – if you guys don't think the government is in your shit, right?
Yeah.
When you have one of those positions that I have, you realize how interconnected it is. Hey, Frank, can you pull up this vent on this engine? It doesn't exist anywhere, but we know you've got a database. Yeah, man. give me 2 hours. Let me see what I can find. Thanks.
That's interesting. Never heard that before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Common.
So, yeah.
For all sorts of reasons, I would never. I didn't want to know. Didn't want to know.
I could see that.
Yeah. So after that debacle, dude, I thought that being a quality analyst would be pretty cool. I like big data. I like to understand trends in things. I'm fascinated by it. I had no idea what the political landmines would be, how big they would be, how litigious it would be. I think if I still did that job, I would have died of a heart attack 10 years ago. Jeez. Just, it's just the stress level of, no, man. So I went to training.
Well, I'm glad you got out of it and didn't have a heart attack 10 years ago.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I spent the vast majority of my life outside of that couple of years, in training where my thought is how could I help people? That was really the goal and the
almost back to what your roots were.
Yeah, very close.
Well, I mean, that actually led me into my thing because that was one of the things I was going to say about the help you gave me that one time. It's just a real interesting story. Okay. So you went to you were in the shop, and I'm like, yeah, there's a Rome Arena cross race this weekend. Why don't you come be my wrench? And just being a smartass said that to you, and you're like, yeah, I'll come. And I was like, oh, shit, cool. And then you showed up, and it was cool. I've got a fucking factory Suzuki mechanic. Yeah. Just a guy, like, the way that I would tell people, I'm like, if Suzuki had a problem they needed to figure out that they couldn't figure out at a shop, they would probably fly you to it to figure it out kind of thing. So that was just really neat to have that.
Yeah, man, I just wanted to help you, man.
I remember, like, I came in from the first practice, and I was like, something is up with my forks. Like, it's doing, like, I was like, maybe a clunk or whatever, and I just had them revalved. I'm not going to say who did it. And I was like, walked away to either get a drink or to go do something. I come back 20 minutes later. My fork is completely disassembled on the floor because it was snowing outside. They had us inside the thing. And you're just like, well, your shim stacks are wrong. The left one is these shims. The right one is these shims. And this shim is broke. And I was like, what? I was gone 20 minutes. So, yeah, and you put it back together. The forks were amazing the rest of the weekend.
I probably changed the valving for you. I probably got the valving where I thought it was right for your weight and your...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just... I wanted to share that story because I just thought that was really cool. How
Yeah, man.
I always remember you for that. And it was pretty awesome.
That's cool, man.
But
yeah.
Yeah, that was part of, like... It was not quite the Atlanta snowpocalypse, but it was like a year or so before it. So I don't know if you remember it. But, yeah, it was completely snow, like this thick outside. You walk outside and you're slipping on your ass and stuff. So they had...
That would have been like 20...
It would have been 2009 or 10 because it was a 2009 RMZ 450 that I had, and it was the 08 they didn't release till 09.
That was the one that I had flow bench the head on too, wasn't it?
You know what? Why don't we get into that story?
Did we pick up any ponies on that?
We did, and in fact, I'd never seen a flow bench, never really knew it one before, but I recall coming over to your house in Cartersville.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I'm driving down that road now, I still just happen to look down because you can see the neighborhood from the road real well.
Yeah, I'm still there.
And are you? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I haven't moved.
Well,
Been there for 17 years, man.
I thought you had at some point, but
No.
yeah, I still remember where you lived then. But just it was really neat. You set the thing on there, and you did some JB Weld stuff, and you showed me about how basically sticking. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I want you to explain to people flow bench and the process. But it was like you move the tube into here, and you can read these numbers, and it's like here's the sweet spot, and this is the curves of stuff like that. So tell the people about flow bench and that stuff.
Oh my God, there's we could do a whole week's episode on
All right, dummy it down in the shortest, fastest way you can.
I'll say this. There was a point in my life, in probably my mid-20s, where I was completely obsessed with the art of flowing things. I flowed everything. So flow benches, what they are is they're a tool that measures... They're a tool that measures the amount of air that is pumped through an engine. And if you really think about engines, they're nothing more than large air pumps. So the more air you can get into an engine and the more you can push out of it, the more power you can make. And that there are some very simple rules, like 43 CFM, cubic feet per minute, by inches of mercury, you can calculate its theoretical best potential horsepower on pump gas, right? And that's perfect ignition, perfect compression. So if you take a cylinder, so this is what I can do, is that I can take a part off, I can slap it on a flow bench, I can give you max flow numbers, and if someone says, yeah, man, it'll make 46, I'll be like, nope, make 43.2, best. But we might be able to get a little more out of it.
Yeah.
And so the flow bench is a very precise measuring tool to quantify how badly you fucked it up, right? Because that's what happens a lot of times, that you go backwards. The tool you were talking about is actually a velocity probe.
Okay.
And a velocity probe measures so the way it works, and I haven't even thought about flow benches in years, I just haven't played with them. I still have that flow bench. That flow bench has got a story. That if you have high pressure, you have no movement. If you have low pressure but high velocity, right, you have a pressure differential. So the idea is that if you can start to plot where the air is dead and fill it,
yes,
you can pick up the volumetric efficiency.
And that's where you were putting the JB Weld, and then we were shaping it from that.
If you find that the air is really moving fast, that's typically a restriction. So what a velocity probe allows you to do with enough time is you can map the port and figure out exactly how the port breathes. And then what you can do is start to fill it or cut it in certain spots. And a lot of guys think that they just cut ports and they're better.
Yeah.
Those
or they'll just polish them up.
They're fucking idiots. That oftentimes you have to fill a port as much as you have to cut it, because you'll find that the shape of the you can't just cut it.
Yeah.
So to explain, let me explain inertia charging real quick. Inertia charging. So when I throw out a number, 128% VE, which is volumetric efficiency. Well, if I had 1,000 cc's, and if I could cram 1,000 cc's of air in that cylinder, you have 100% VE. So how in the hell do you get over 100%? Because these good motors, right, well-tuned motors, not that thing.
Don't be talking shit about my CR500.
Yeah, well, and
That's
I love two-strokes, but two-strokes aren't anywhere near that.
Yeah.
You don't have, but I don't want to, it's too deep. That with volumetric, that air has mass and it has weight. And imagine this, that if you can get enough air movement, you can get that air to basically push itself into the cylinder and overcharge itself. But you have to have a lot of air speed. So the whole trick is not only getting the port. That's the reason that bigger ports don't always make more power.
Yeah.
You have to get the port perfectly optimized to where it will pack the cylinder in And then if you have good timing where you can open and close the valves at very precise time, either 2-stroke or 4-stroke, you can actually imagine this. So you have all this massive air that comes in and compresses, and then you close the valve on top of it. You've got more than 100%.
Yeah.
So it's like you're playing with some. So folks that really understand flow benches, folks that understand inertia porting, that they're not trying to just make the hole bigger because that's stupid. What you're really trying to do is you're trying to optimize port velocity to improve volumetric efficiency, right? And that's all the engineering behind it. But that's what you're actually doing with the engine. So that's what I was attempting to do with your motor. And I think I found something on the bottom. I just don't remember what the results were when we rode it.
I can tell you, I've had a lot of people ride that bike, and I put over 200 to 250 hours on that thing before I sold it. It's probably still the fastest 450 I ever had. And I'd had all kinds of people that would tell me the same thing. Like, I'm sure I'll have buddies that will listen to this and be like, dude, yeah, that reminded me I was scared to death of your 09. It was almost too much, but the nice thing with it was, like, it was usable power.
It should have been all at the bottom from what I remember.
It was nice. I do remember that.
It shouldn't have done a whole lot for the top, but it should have really improved. Typical Suzuki. Mm-hmm. Nothing on the bottom, nothing on the top, everything in the middle, and it's like, how do you get a nice smooth transition?
Yeah.
And how do you get it to make power everywhere? And it's just that's generally just not the way Suzuki.
I love that bike. I honestly wish I'd kind of
that's flow bit that's just some basic, without getting too deep. But yeah, man, the art of flow, dude. There was a point where I really put a lot of energy, and I can say this throughout my life. I firmly believe in first principles. Mm-hmm. You break things down into their most fundamental basic truths, and that you basically build them up from there. And that I've spent my life in an attempt to understand the nature of things around me and how do they actually work, right? So to me, if someone's talking about porting cylinders, and if they can't explain it on those levels, they don't know what they're doing. They really don't. They're like, yeah, man, like polishing. Let's just touch that for a second. So, of course, I tested polishing, right? Someone that would know me, it's like, yeah, Frank probably spent about 3 weeks in a room, probably didn't eat or sleep, and probably wanted to prove the hypothesis of polishing, right? and I did. So I took 3 cylinders. This was when I worked for UTI. And I polished a set of transfers. I then sandblasted them to like 320 grit or rough sand. And then I just left the rough casting without actually changing much of the surface area. And and I also CC'd the port to know what was the variance and change, so then I could calibrate that difference relative to flow, right? Because if you make a 3% net area increase, if you hog the port out because you polish it, because the port's bigger, it's going to flow more. You fucking cheated. So what I had done is I had CC'd the ports to the exact CC, and that even though the other 2 ports were slightly larger because you move material from them, I used a correction factor to put them back to their base value, right? From a math standpoint.
Yeah.
And what I had, and the flow bench manual said this, I just didn't believe it, that the flow bench manual, if you pick it up, a super flow manual will tell you that surface texture has less than 2% effect on flow. And I'm like, bullshit. You polish the port, it's going to go faster. It turned out they were exactly right, that they had done all the research, and that surface texture has almost no impact on flow. And as a matter of fact, in some spots of a port, you want the port rough. You actually want it to have... Does
that apply to 2 strokes as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the concept is called a boundary layer. That, let's say, for example, on like a 2-stroke where you have a transfer port that comes in, sits back at a very specific angle, and I forget the angle, right? That little curve right there, that really sharp curve, don't fuck with that. They put a lot of effort into that. It looks like you could radiate and pick up some flow. Well, you probably could, but what you have to understand is, and the texture of that port, that if you have a really sharp curve, the air is going to do this. It's going to come in and it's going to bounce, and it's going to disrupt the flow. So what they'll do is that they'll roughen that edge of the port. So I'm just trying to think of a way to explain it. If you're running down the freeway at 80 miles an hour and you get this close to the wall and you stick your hand out, there's no wind pressure. So what happens is that you create what they call a boundary layer where you're pushing air this direction, but air is actually being exerted and being forced in the other direction. And that if you have a really sharp port where you're trying to get the air around it, that you can create a boundary layer based on the texture to get the port to flow more naturally. And you may not be able to beat it. So these guys that think that polishing their shit is smart, they haven't done enough research to understand what they're actually doing. And that the bottom line is this: surface texture, Flowbench 101. I wish I could remember the chapter and the page. I can't.
I'm surprised you can't.
Yeah, actually, as I've gotten older, my memory has gotten a lot worse. Probably too many concussions.
I was going to say that.
From damn motorcycles. When I was younger, I definitely could have, but now it's just not that good. Surface texture has less than 2% bearing on flow, effect on flow. It's just not. So it's almost like saying, yeah, man, it's dropped 15 degrees. I can't ride my shit because it's not fast anymore because the air density dropped. You know, that would have as much impact. 15 degrees would have as much impact on the CFN, the flow characteristics, the power that an engine would make due to air density, as the surface texture of your port. It's not fucking real. It's like go find something that's good, that's real. You know, it's but there are reasons that there are reasons that you polish ports. You polish ports to keep carbon off of them, unlike the exhaust side, right? The top of the piston, that's pretty fucking smart, right? Because you don't want all the carbon, but you typically want something like the intake to be pretty rough. Then the question is exactly how rough do you want it? Well, it depends on where it's at in the port, right? Then it's like, you know, there's all, you know, and now you're down into the real science of engine design. You know, and it's not what people think. Anyhow.
It's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So one other thing on my list of something to talk about, and you said something that made me go, I want to talk about this now, is tell me about that RM125 that you put a Harley Davidson cylinder into. Well, it was a 360.
Okay. So this was
this 16 years ago. You told me this story.
Captain and I.
Captain. Who's Captain?
Okay. So the number 2 guy, Jim Kirkland. I named him
Captain Kirk.
I named him Captain Kirk. Anytime I went and saw the captain, because he's a fucking captain, right? It's Captain Kirk. Captain had a meeting, and that he wanted to gather, you know, some of what he thought were the best people at Suzuki, and that he had put his ambitions on a world speed record. And
this is
Bonnie Sue.
Oh, are these the same stories then? No, I thought.
Depends.
So I got the Bonneville LSR attempt with Captain Kurt, but no, I thought when you were younger,
how young?
You built.
Oh, my 410.
Yeah.
My Suzuki 410.
Yeah, you took a 125, and people would come up to you and be
no, it was actually a 250 that I had turned into.
It was a 250.
Okay. Because how do you take a 125cc engine and turn it into 410
Okay,
cc?
so I had a little bit of my stuff mixed up.
410 is still crazy. That's a crazy increase in displacement.
So you took an ARM 250, and what cylinder did you put in it?
So the sleeve. So the problem was, as you know, they're nickel. They're nickel plated, which is aluminum. It's a nickel electrofusion process. Blah blah blah. I don't want to get into the process.
Yeah.
It's a thin, hard coating. It's fucking kick ass.
Yeah.
Suzuki makes the best coating on the planet. They do. But anyhow, I don't and
I want to go down this hole, but I know we're just gonna be here for 20 hours if I really start going down too many holes with you.
Too long. So in order to get the thing as big as I wanted, I had to cut it all the way down about 2/3 of the way into the water jacket. And then it's like, where do you find a sleeve? So LA sleeve. So I'm looking down all the part numbers for dimensions of sleeves, and it's like, no one makes a sleeve the size I want it. And then I come across this Harley Davidson Sportster sleeve, and I'm like, this Harley sleeve happens to have the right OD, outside diameter that I need, but it was too long. So I stuck it in my mill. I cut it down. Then I mapped all the ports.
I was
and
going to say, so was it
it was a Harley sleeve that I had machined down.
Yeah. It had none of the ports for the two-stroke to become.
No, I had to hand cut all the. I had to stick it on a mill and hand cut all the ports. And then what I had found is that due to how thin the water jackets were, there was some flex in the engine cases when you bolt it down, so the thing wouldn't seal 100%. So I had to TIG weld the head to the head to the cylinder, and then bolt it all together to get it where it was fucking watertight, right?
And you didn't tell anybody that it was.
No, and I was running this thing in the CRC and Indoor Arena Cross series, where they have checks.
Yeah.
And I still remember the guy, because these fucking idiots don't know how to check for displacement. Those guys aren't, it's like the guy, the guy looks, asked me to start my bike. He's looking around, and I had machined it off where you couldn't really tell it was welded together. I had really put effort into making this thing look is factory. Even the stock exhaust. I had all
you did still run the stock exhaust, didn't you?
I wanted this thing to look fucking stock. Stock silencer, stock stickers.
Did you purposely run it in the stock class to see if you could get away with it?
Oh, I did. And I was tired of the fucking 4-strokes. I was tired of these big 4-strokes running in our class. And I'm like, okay, motherfuckers, okay.
So what year was this bike then?
1990.
Oh, get this up by your face a little bit. I hear it cutting in and out.
Gotcha. 1995? 4? Somewhere in there.
Okay.
It's been too many years, man. It's been a long time. So Tech looks at me right. He says, starts it up. I rev it a little bit. He's like, that thing sounds funny. And I said, yeah, man, this thing's... Looked him dead in the eye. This thing's been running like shit. I need to have a good mechanic look at this thing. This is how strong this thing was. I was a 185-pound dude, still pretty heavy for moto. That's not a light dude.
Yeah.
You want to be 120 to 145. Those are good numbers. You start pushing 200 pounds, you're a big fucker in that sport. This thing with me in stock gearing would do 4th gear starts all day.
Jeez.
I never even had to shift it. And I poured it in a way that it was smooth. You could just there's the triple.
Yeah.
It's just like hell, it wouldn't even break the tire loose.
Awesome.
People would ride that thing, dude, it would spank that thing. It would fucking crush
I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Crush that thing. Crush it.
Quit talking shit on my 500. That's twice
and
now.
And those are fast
One
bikes.
more strike.
Get out. Those are fast bikes, man.
Yeah.
Those things, you give those things a little exhaust port, oh man, doesn't kill you dead. But anyhow, that's a different for its era. I don't know why anyone would want a 500, but
Dick waving. I'm compensating. Mine's tiny. That's my compensation.
Well, by the way they steer, by the way they brake, by the way they.
Yeah.
To me,
the rear brakes on that and the pegs are terrible.
Oh, they've got no brakes. They've got no fucking brakes.
Yeah. That one's still drummed too. So.
Yeah. The drum brakes on those old Hondas, those things don't work.
No, not at all. I rode it twice, and after that, I was like,
well, it's just how they put power down, and they're just 250 so much better.
Yeah, agreed.
So much better. And the 125 is better than the 500. It really was, even in that era.
Yeah.
I thought so. Just how a 125 put power down.
Well, I was one when that was made, so you're way older than me. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, that bike was like my era, man.
It was pretty funny when you walked in the kitchen, and it was because we hadn't seen each other in 14 years, and you're like, "How old are you now?" I was like, "Fuck, yeah."
Yeah, right.
I mean, would I have been close to your
ride.
age? Yeah, that's what it was. You were like, "How old are you?" And you still ride? I'm just too stupid to stop.
It's just so hard on your body, man. And when you get older, it's for me, when I was young, when I was in my mid-20s, nothing ever happened to me. And as I started to get closer to 30, I couldn't get away from the injuries. Your body's just not as good, man.
Yeah. Well, here's my theory with it, and this is what I tell my wife, and this is my story. I'm sticking to it. I don't care what anybody says. A body in motion stays in motion. So all these, I've got to keep riding, or all these injuries are going to catch up to me, and I'm not going to be able to move. So in order to still be able to just function in my daily life, I've got to go ride at least once a week. That's what I tell my wife. So
good for you, man.
I don't think she buys any of that shit.
Maybe. I don't. It's an awesome.
I'm sorry, people, for all these coughs. I've had a cough for 3 weeks. I have a child that's in kindergarten, and he is a jerk, and gives me things every now and then. And even though I'm pretty sure I'm not contagious, sorry if I am.
We'll find out.
Yeah. 2 weeks from now, I get a text from you, son of a bitch. But I do want to say that we're going to keep going to this next story. But before I forget to do this, I got some bills to pay. So Frank here is brought to you by my good friends at HKR. Let's get a little some money here.
Our next segment is brought to you by Hard Knocks Racing. They're a group of dedicated motorcycle enthusiasts since 1998. They're your go-to for Campfire Moto official gear and will soon launch an apparel line of their own. They excel in crafting all kinds of custom decals, like this badass sign behind me, from custom signs to full bus wraps and office customization. In fact, check out this work Anthony did at one of the well-known Japanese manufacturer's office who will remain nameless. They also crafted awards for prestigious events such as the Perry Mountain 24-hour race, Mill Creek Spring Classic, Seika Hair Scramble Series, and many more for local racetracks in the Southeast. Check out hardknocksracing.com or give Anthony D'Amico a call at 404-717-2480.
And we're back. All right, so we did those quick bills. So I wanted to, since we started talking about the 125 for the Bonneville, Captain Kirk, tell us about that. Where do you start?
So Captain pulled us into a room, had a small group of people, told us that he would like to, before he retires, that he would like to have a world speed record under his belt and that he wants to be the rider.
And from what I can recall you telling me this story, is you were like, because I was about a $120 then, you were like, if you would have been in the thing, we probably would have got the speed record. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, that fat son of a bitch. I love Captain. He was a heavier guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was older. You pick up some weight as we get older. You know, none of us are, but he was too big. His belly, not that aerodynamic. No. So that bike, we had modeled it under the Hayabusa.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've actually got a picture for our YouTube thumbnail.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's probably some stuff on there.
I used you on it.
Oh yeah, that's Bonnie Sue.
Yeah, there she is right there. The so it's like a GSXR.
Yeah, no
tail and body, right?
No,
or
that's
front.
that's an all. Yep, that's Bonnie Sue. That's and that was the bodywork AF. I see that was the natural gas version. We ran different classes with it.
Wait, that was a natural gas engine?
No. Oh, as in not natural gas, as in pump gas, as in non, as in yeah.
So you couldn't run. It was just 87 pump gas.
Yeah. That was that. We had different builds.
Huh. Okay.
That was yeah. That's a Hayabusa, all body. I custom, so the frame, the engine, most of that was hand built by me. We had our in-house corporate dyno, and I had spent. How many hours trying to get this thing fast enough, and I still remember. So this is what we did. We were first chasing, because that would have been an early photo. We were first chasing because we looked at all the rules. We looked at the bike. We strategized on what bike, what plastic, what displacement. Where could we get a world speed record, right? Because we're looking at all these and being like, I think we can get this. And
Would it not have made sense for Suzuki to take a Hayabusa or a GSX-R 1000 to try to get it? Or
Yeah, no, but some of those classes are so they have different classes with different displacement and different fuels. They have 20 different classes. So we're looking at all the classes to figure out where the low-hanging fruit is.
Okay.
And we found out that was one of the classes that we thought we could beat. And it turned out that was the naturally aspirated pump gas class was that particular one. And I still remember that we had gotten the CD, the coefficient of drag, from the sales department, which was printed at 0.21 CD. The Hayabusa, and I still don't know if this is true today, but it might be, world's most aerodynamic motorcycle. There was nothing previous that had a CD of 0.21. And once you know what the coefficient of drag, so if you're talking top speed, you can calculate how fast something will go based on a couple of numbers. Frictional loss has varied. So in other words, the tires, the chains, less than just a couple percent, definitely less than 10%. Most of the drag at high speed, and it's not weight either, it's what's the aero drag and how much horsepower does it have. So I get the calculator out. 1999 Hayabusa, world's fastest production bike, still holds the record, at 167 rear wheel horsepower, and a CD of 0.21 will do 201 miles an hour. Those were the numbers.
Of course, with the 186 governor removed.
No, so the 99 didn't have the governor?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I thought 99 is when Honda came out with the Blackhawk, or
they couldn't touch it though.
But that's where
they
came up with that whole thing.
The year 2000.
Basically 300 kilometers. Yeah, they're like, we already made our bike to where.
After they did that, so Suzuki got in. The one year they beat the land speed world record. Let me turn this off.
That's fine. Is it the missus? Did you even tell her you were coming?
I don't hide anything from her. I told her exactly what I was doing. She didn't know who you were.
She's probably just saw it and was like, "Are you doing cocaine?"
Oh my God. Yeah, babe, I'm doing. That seems like something I would do. Where were we? So 1999, there was no top speed law in place from the government. 2000, after Suzuki did this, they required, so this is what they did. They said, we are going to institute a top speed law, or you folks manage yourselves. So then everyone in the company, in all the corporations, got together and had a gentleman's agreement.
Yeah.
That's what actually happened.
So I recalled it wrong. I thought it was the Blackhawk that did that, but no, I'm guessing it was the Hayabusa.
That's not what it was. The Hayabusa.
Oh, okay.
It was that body. So theoretically, so we had dyno tested this thing. We started out RM 125, made 26 horsepower on EPA dyno, real horsepower, not the bullshit they give you, not magazine horsepower, what they actually make, right? So it's like an EPA dyno, that you use for testing emissions. They're accurate down to the 10th of a horsepower, not like your fake dyno jet. Right? I mean, just calling it what.
Yeah.
What
calling a spade a spade.
That's a real dyno with real numbers, and that. So, for example, Travis Pastrana's 125 on our EPA dyno, 29 horsepower. Right? Just to give it some numbers.
Okay.
So we had this thing we ported it for 17,500 RPM. May have been 18.5.
What were they making out of the box? Like 12.5?
Yeah. You could rev them to the point that they just stopped moving with no load at 12.5, but they really didn't make power much above 10.
Okay.
You could rev them out there. They just didn't do anything. They fell off the curve. So we were at a real horsepower of 41 horsepower. That's what we had done to this thing.
So from 26 to 41.
This thing had more real world horsepower at that era than like the 426 Yamahas had, because we dynoed them. That thing would smack it for a really short RPM range.
Yeah.
So it was good for 3 runs.
It's not something you'd want to go take on a motocross track.
Oh my God,
but
unrideable.
Yeah.
The way it made power, unrideable.
Was it just like a sewing machine, just
It
kind
was
of thing?
more like nothing. Turn the lights on, and it's like, hold on. we missed that land speed record by something like 20 miles an hour, where all the math says that, because we went out and we did some testing before the big day, obviously. We did a lot of testing. First time we were off by like 20 miles an hour, and I'm like, what the motherfucker are you talking about? Here are the dyno numbers. Here's the coefficient of drag. And I even took some other bikes back that we had tested and been like, here's the coefficient of drag. Here's the top speed. Here's where it tested at. It's within 2 or 3 miles an hour. How are we off by 2 or 3 miles? How is it even possible? And it turned out that the coefficient of drag that the Hayabusa said it had. So then there was a report, there were some questions, was performed with no mirrors. And here's the big one. No rider.
What?
Yeah. So it has a coefficient of drag of 0.21 with no mirrors and no rider. You put a rider on it, and now all of a sudden, so then we got the number from them, about 4.6. And then I ran the math, right? And then we're sitting in a room, and Captain, so I called him Captain Kirk, and he called me Scotty. That was just, that it didn't matter.
That makes
That's
sense.
just what we did.
Yep.
And he had some joke on the dilithium crystals were broke or something that day, and I'm like, so tell me what's going on, Frank. So I lay all these numbers out, and I show it to him, and I'm ready. You don't sit in a room with Captain and not have your shit ready, because he will chew you up. He just will. So I had all the numbers, I had all the stats, I did all the back comparisons, and I laid out this picture, this compelling story that the Japanese had obviously lied, and that the coefficient drag was really not 0.21, and it was really more about 4.6. And then I showed him the numbers in the other comparison. I see him get red. I see him get fucking red. And Captain usually doesn't lose his composure that much. He's like, fucking sales department. Right? And here we are. So we've got all this time in this thing. And what I told him we should do is we need to scrap the body. They lied to us, and that we need to go to, and I found some other bodies that were much smaller, that had a much lower CD, that I had the means that had been tested in wind tunnels, third party, and I knew what the numbers were, and I said, I think we can get close. And then what we need is a 12-year-old girl. That's what I told him.
And that's where you said,
Yeah, dude. You need a 12-year-old girl to pull this off. You're too fat, Captain. I love you, buddy, but you're too fat. I just told him, you're too fat. And then I gave him data, and I showed him what would happen.
You showed him data on how he's too fat. That's great. Classic.
It's the Captain. Because you have to realize that he's pitched all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
And if you cannot give him numerical, factual data that can drive outcomes, just stop with that guy.
Yeah.
You know, that's not the dude. You better have all your shit ready when you talk to the Captain. Right? So he's like, what do we do now? And he would not let me abandon the project and go to a different body style. He's like, no, we've got too much effort in it. We're going to use the body we have.
Honestly, like, I remember seeing the pictures of it because you showed me a bunch back then, and I kind of thought that the body was too wide and big for the frame itself. Like, I felt like a GSXR 600 plastic would make more sense. So what plastic did you want to try?
I don't even remember.
That
it was
would have
something
been better.
small. No, I don't even think it was a cowling that was available here in the U.S. I think it was a Suzuki. It was a non-U.S. Body. I just don't remember exactly what it was. It's just been too long. It wasn't that. But yes, you're right. But we're right. But those weren't the numbers we were given, and we're based on, just because it's big, it doesn't mean that it's not aerodynamic, and it's just right, and that the whole theme that we were running on is that you need enough area to get it over the rider, because the rider's really dirty. That was there was all kinds of logic that goes into why it turned out that it was all predicated on bullshit, and it wasn't real, and that the sales department had lied about the CD.
Well, that's not true.
They
just
did what they did.
not include that it didn't have a rider or mirrors on it. They just, I used those same
when they
tactics.
actually said the mirror thing, they actually told the public that. They just didn't. They just kind of
forgot the non-rider part.
Yeah.
But I can appreciate that, because I use a lot of those same tactics tactics because I don't lie to people, but I will twist my words to mess with them to get bets made and things like that. So my good friends will, most of the time, like if I'm trying to get a bet out of them, they kind of take a step back and they're like, let me read between what you're actually saying and what bet is actually going to be.
Yeah.
So
it's
I can appreciate that from
typical
them.
corporate deal. That's what they do.
Yeah.
That's what they do. So then we were left with the decision, the really hard decision. It's like, how do we win? And I'm looking at all the classes. I'm like, Captain, we could run methanol and nitromethane. And I was already prepared. You don't show up with Captain with a suggestion like that unless if you have some data. So I had sent him some charts on what I thought it could make with horsepower. And I started out with the nitromethane chart, right? Because Captain was the PowerPoint link. Where's the PowerPoint? Where's the slide deck? Let's see it. Okay, Captain, here's the slide deck. Here's nitromethane. Nitromethane has as much explosive power by weight as TNT dynamite. Any questions? If we have this much horsepower, and if we run, we were thinking about 30% nitromethane, we should have more than enough horsepower to beat the world speed record, even with you on it. And then I warned him. I'm like, we can try this, but here's the problem. When you get methanol and nitromethane in a two-stroke engine, I have no idea how unpredictable it will be. I have no idea if the engine, the billet engines that we had spent who knows how much money, because it wasn't cast, would take it. I don't know if the rod will survive this.
Yeah.
Right? Those were the problems.
It would be a one-run type thing.
So we
if
started
it was
to
gonna
play with
make
the
it.
methanol. And I remember we came across this tuning roadblock where the things would fuel starve themselves, and I could not figure out how to solve it. And Kelly McLean at KMS Performance, guy that does supercharging and nitromethane and does the dune runs, and he's very popular out there.
Mm-hmm.
I'd known Kelly for years. So I call up Kelly. I'm like, Kelly, I've got a problem. I'm stuck. And he says, Frank, you know what's happening is that the carburetor on a two-stroke only has about 7 pounds of differential, that the intake pull isn't that strong on a two-stroke, and that the specific gravity of nitromethane is X, and that you don't have the differential to pull the fuel up through the jets with nitromethane, and that it doesn't matter how big you get the jets, you will never prevent this thing from fuel starving. So then what he recommended that we do is that we use the fuel side off of nitrous oxide. But we don't use nitrous oxide. We inject nitromethane, because nitromethane is way stronger than nitrous oxide is like, that's like marijuana versus cocaine. The guys that are playing with nitrous, they're not playing with real hot. They're not playing with anything that makes really. Top fuel dragsters seem pretty fast. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we weren't playing with this thing at all. It's like Captain wanted a world speed record. He's getting close to retirement. Captain's getting a world speed record. That's it. We will find a way, right? So we had run the fuel side off of nitrous. We injected nitromethane and methanol directly into the engine at like 8,700 RPM, right where the power valve opened. And here was the thing. You push the button, you had less than a mile. Because the problem is that, and we had melted this motor down 50 times. The problem is that you got a piston this big around. You only have so much aluminum. You can only dissipate so much heat. That it doesn't matter what we had a cooling head that I had hand machined. I mean, it was crazy when you looked at the thing with replaceable domes because we blew it up so many times. And there was a point where you just could not. You know, it was funny. We tried ceramic coating. You know what we found was actually the toughest? Nickel. Really? We nickel coated everything. And the reason being is because the melting point of nickel is really high.
Oh,
yeah.
That
So
makes
before
sense.
the nickel, right? The liquid, the pistons were 100% nickel. So the pistons, I could only imagine what was happening. You know, when you leaned on it with nitromethane, the aluminum had probably liquefied on the inside, and it was probably running on the outer shell of the nickel before it would melt itself down. But as soon as you push the button, you had less than a mile. And here was the thing with the gearing and top speed. It took it took something like 1.1 miles to get up to top speed. So the engine, yeah, I think, is that okay?
You're good. You're good.
So
I'm messing with something else.
Yeah, so the engine would melt itself down before it ever reached top speed due to the gearing, right? That's what we were dealing with. By the way, we put this thing on the dyno, our EPA dyno. The biggest number we ever saw on it was 64 horsepower. And the reason that the number was never recorded higher than that, because it should have been a lot higher, it would white smoke the rear tire every time it came on the pipe, bolted down onto the dyno with me sitting on it. At over 100 miles an hour. Right? You have a 125 that'll do that. You got yourself a fast 125. And I'm looking at Captain. I'm like, Captain, how are you going to ride this thing on the salt? This thing's going to kill you.
Yeah.
And he did it. He almost went down one time, by the way. So we're out there at Salt Flats. And and there's always all this chatter about all this make-believe stuff. And part of some of the things that I had to do is to figure out what is scientific, what is fact-based, what is based on objective reality. Mm-hmm. And that they were telling me about this salt vapor, right? And I was having to calculate the jetting based on this is how close this thing, because this thing would melt itself. It was already going to blow up before it ever reached top speed. So we had to hit the gearing and the jetting and everything absolutely perfect. And I ran all the numbers, and this is what I told Captain. I said, Captain, we're going to lose. That night before we left, Captain, we're going to lose by 5 miles an hour. When I calculate the altitude, when I calculate the amount of time, and I didn't factor in salt vapor because I thought it was a bullshit, that we will never be able to do this, and that then I show him some other numbers. If we run a slightly smaller guy, we walk away from a world record. And this is what Captain does. He says, guys, do you want me to step down from this so we can win a world record? And you know what we all voted? No, man, this was about your retirement.
Yeah. That's cool.
We support you, and even though we cannot do this, even though the laws of physics say that we cannot do this, you're the guy.
Well,
and
that's
yeah,
pretty
so
cool.
so we loaded up. We go out there. We spend 2 days out there. This aired on Speed Vision.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah, it aired on Speed Vision. It was a really big event. I never got the recording from that, and I should reach out to Speed Vision to see if they still have it somewhere.
That'd be cool.
Because it's like, what a cool experience. Not everyone that's a once in a lifetime. The biggest problem at the Salt Flats, when they found out who we were, dude, the line of people. There were people down, and I'm like, guys, I can't help you.
I got work to do.
I got stuff to do. Thank you for all the questions.
Yeah.
And I picked up some of them. It's like, okay, take your Power Commander piece of shit, throw it in the garbage. Take your TRE, throw it in the garbage. Go put the thing back to stock. Stop over gearing it. Your Hayabusa won't do 200 anyways.
Yeah.
Just stop. I can't. It won't. Just don't. Use 5th gear, not 6th gear, because it won't pull it with your fat ass. Okay?
I mean, you were really kind of being nice to him all the time.
Well, yeah, no. Well, I was being direct and I was being honest.
I know. You were very blunt with it. I'm going to give you the
yeah,
truth.
Yeah, but I refuse to lie to people. But I couldn't tell him all the things that turned out not right. I couldn't tell him that we lied about the CD. I couldn't tell him that the bike really wasn't as fast as,
the sales department said.
Yeah, I mean, what do? You just try to tell him what things not to do and to salt vapor, man. And it's like, well, I wouldn't say that because that's a lie. And it's like, at what point do you have some integrity with the stuff?
So do me this. I was plugging in the other headphones because I've got a few people saying that your mic is going in and out. And also, we do a live callers. People can call in live and share stories and banter back and forth with us. Yeah. So the lines are open to anybody who's watching this live. If anybody wants to call in. That other headset is sitting right there.
So run this headset?
Yeah. Just run the line back behind you there.
Okay. It looks like it's caught. So I may have to move over.
It should be good to where you can just take that one off and put it on you, maybe.
So can I disconnect?
No. Just swap headsets.
Okay.
Yeah, just take that one off, set it over there. And then I'm going to turn that one down and turn that one on. So go ahead and do a little test.
So testing one. Well, this sounds a whole lot better internally.
Okay.
How's it sound to you?
I mean, it sounds the same to me. I've not had problems with you cutting in and out the whole time. Just a few people text me and on the live chat had said something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, man. So where were we? So that was aired on Speed Vision. We missed the world speed record in that class. There were different classes. One of them we missed it by like 18 miles an hour, but that particular class we missed it by 6 miles an hour. So I calculated the math. I was off by 1 mile an hour.
Oh.
And I knew Captain. The whole funny thing is the guy that had set the world speed record was an engineering professor.
Oh, interesting.
What was it, Stanford? They had done their bike that they had done for that project had estimated $800,000 in wind tunnel testing.
Oh, Jesus.
And from that whole thing, I had internally there was a saying. It's like, we don't believe in we don't believe in fucking aerodynamics. We just make more horsepower, and it's a backhanded joke.
Yeah.
Because when you do the math, air is squared, and that you reduce the air drag. You don't make more power. I mean, it's a fool's errand to try to make more power. If you can find a way, like again, look at a top fuel dragster. Look at the effort they went to minimize the size of the vehicle. The damn thing's that big around in the front and has a roll cage with some tires. And it's and it's there's a reason for all that. The thing's not shaped like a bus.
Yeah.
It's yeah. But anyhow, so that was, yeah, Bonnie Sue. Captain still sends me messages once in a while.
What area is he living in now? Because he's obviously retired.
Oh, he's been gone for a long time. Retired a long time. He still lives in Southern California. He still messages me on Facebook once in a while and just pokes at me a little bit.
That's cool.
Or wants me to listen to some two-stroke and been like, hey, how does that sound?
You'll have to send the link to him so you let him hear the story. Well, damn, I don't know if I thought there was a few
Captain
people that
would
were
love
planning
it.
to
Love it.
call
Love that
in.
dude. Love that dude, by the way. Super high integrity.
You know what's funny is I had reached out to a few people that we know, and Ed. Oh my God.
Eskew?
Yes, thank you. I was like, I know his last name. I ran into him. Opie did like a premiere for that movie he was part of, so
Yeah,
I hadn't seen him in a while, and he was there that night.
It's been retired too for quite a while.
Yeah, but I reached out to him and was like, what's something I should ask him? And he said, Bonneville LSR attempt with Captain Kirk. And for a minute there, I was actually like, wait a second, was actual Captain Kirk part of that whole thing? Because it's been so long since I remember the story about it, so I was like...
Jim is a captain, man.
No, I meant like the actual William Shatner.
Well,
I was like,
well,
crap, was William Shatner part of that?
And if you saw a picture of Jim Kirkland, he's even similar, at similar ages.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar characteristics, very similar body style.
That's funny.
I would even argue to say even similar speech cadence. I mean, a lot of similarities. more than you know, doesn't look exactly like him, but kin to him, you know?
All right, so I guess nobody's going to be calling that's watching in live. Maybe the audio issues made people go, F this, and cut it off.
Yeah, maybe.
So one of the next segments that I do, because I've got quite a few segments that are part of this show, is some tech tip ones. So one of my buddies that's planning to call is waiting for us to just call. I would call him, but for whatever reason, it won't let me call out.
So
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, I've called him before the last show and tried to get it fixed out, but it didn't work. So
tech tips.
Yeah, I was about to start tech tips, but he seems like he's actually calling in.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
While he is, we're waiting since there we go. Hey, who do we got?
Yo, This is Chicken Shit Joe with Hard Knocks Racing. That's who you got.
Hey, Joe. So the Hard Knocks Racing sponsor, he's the
gotcha.
CFO of it.
Oh, cool.
He was also my first guest on the show.
Oh, gotcha.
But we
go.
went mountain biking a few weeks ago, and he was like, I got to call in and tell this story live because I want to share it with us. So hit it off with me, Joe.
All right, gotcha. All right, so I don't know, maybe 1992, 1993, when I first started to get into dirt bikes, my dad got me my first bike, 89 CR 125, and just total goon, total beginner, just trying to figure out what motocross was about. This is what I decided to choose, and well, I decided I wanted to race. I wanted to be a somebody on a dirt bike. And, right, like we just was hearing a little while ago.
Yeah,
so,
we all wanted to be the next McGrath at that time. Right?
Exactly. Well, at that point, I decided, high school baseball, no good. High school basketball, no good. I'm quitting all of that stuff, quitting all my varsity sports. I want to ride dirt bikes.
And to be clear, you, not saying you were no good at those sports, you could have probably gone to college on a scholarship in those sports, but to you, they were dead because you got to ride a dirt bike. Yeah.
I had several scholarship offers for multiple sports, yes. So very easily could have had a lot of things paid for had I chosen a different path, perhaps. But anyway, so it's, like I said, 92, 93, I don't know, 15, 16 years old, maybe 17, and I'm scheduled to take my SATs on a Saturday. And, there was practice at Lazy River that Saturday, and I kind of wanted to go practice. And, there was only maybe two other guys in my whole high school that rode, 2 or 3 others that rode, maybe just a couple of racers. And I talked with a couple of the guys a little bit here and there, and these were the racers. I wanted to be a racer. I didn't want to just ride. So I figured, well, if these guys are going to be there, I'm gonna try to be there with them. So I kept bugging them, and finally they invited me to go ride with them. Well, it just happened to be on the Saturday of the SATs that I got the invite. I figured this is my only chance to hook up with the cool guys, to hook up with the guys that race. I got to take that chance, and I got to make it happen however I got to make it happen. So I totally pulled a Crew Jones from Rad, ditched my SATs, and went riding with these guys.
Well, you went in, if I remember right, because you told me the story years ago, you went in, signed your name, and just went down with C's, and then said, I'm out.
C. Did the scan sign, filled it out.
How did that work?
And then I pulled hey, I got to go to the bathroom, and I just peeled out of there. So my parents still wonder why I got like a 400 on my SATs the first year.
Gotcha.
So anyways, get to the track, and like I said, I'm trying to impress these guys. I want them to know that I'm serious, and this is something that I want to do. So a couple laps into practice, I try a jump I had no business trying. Case the hell out of it. Go over the
Which
bar.
one was it?
Put a foot peg through my helmet. Taco everything. Bars, levers, everything's bent. Fenders are broken. Subframe's tacoed. And I'm sitting in the pitch trying to kind of regain my composure. And Tony D, that's Tony D'Amico, one of the founding fathers, the godfather of Hard Knocks Racing. He's zip tying and JV welding and duct taping all my shit back together and stuff. And he's like, you need to get back out there and ride a little bit more, son. I got your bike put back together. Get on it, get going. So, I had a concussion. I was beat up pretty bad, but I wanted so badly to be a part of the crew, the part of the gang that raced, that I had to get out there and I had to ride some more. And, so I did. I went out and put in a few more laps and stuff. And I just remember thinking, like, wow, I wonder what these cool racer guys are thinking about the squid who just came riding with them for the first time. He just goes over the bars. He's a goofball. Man, this guy's going to be done riding. This is his first time to, like, a real motocross track, and he wads it up bad. This guy's done. That's what I think that those guys are thinking of me. And, they end up inviting me back on a couple more rides, and, we start to become good friends and everything. And I guess that was kind of my introduction and my induction into hard knocks racing. I had to bleed to be a part of these guys. Like I said, I wanted to be a part of their team, man. These guys were grassroots. These guys were hardcore. And like I said, I didn't want to ride. I wanted to be a racer because, let's face it, there is a difference. We all know that.
Because what happens when you get on the box, Joe?
You get in the box.
One of Joe's famous sayings, if you're ever going to a race with him and he's on the line with you, he will be in your ear. Better get out there and get on that box, or you're not getting in the box tonight. Old lady's not letting you in. So it's one of Joe's many famous sayings. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Joe's a character. You would like him.
But, yeah, like I said, it was just my introduction to hard knocks racing. And I think, the name kind of says it all, man. We did whatever we had to do to go racing and to just, be a team.
Wasn't there that same weekend that somebody wasn't going to let you out on the track, but Tony D yelled at them that you paid your money, or was that a different story?
Oh, that was awesome. That was a race at Paradise.
Oh, okay. I thought this was the same story. That's right.
Yeah, I wadded up real bad in the first turn off the start, got run over, broke my wrist, tore my ACL, tore my MCL, and was definitely dingy. As I'm coming to, the paramedics are there starting to take off my helmet. Next thing I know, Tony D runs up to him. Again, this is Tony D'Amico, Godfather of HKR. Comes running up, barrels through the paramedic. Get off of him. Don't touch him. Don't take his helmet off. He's fine. He's going to finish the race. He paid good money. Get the hell away from him.
Oh, boy.
So, like I said, I'm beat up real bad, but the adrenaline's so high, I get right back on my bike. Tony D says, Joey, catch one rider. Just catch one rider. You're not hurt. Don't be a pussy. Catch one guy. Go. So, okay, yeah, the Godfather says go, you go. So, get back on the bike. I did catch one guy. I finished my moto, rode back to the pits, and as soon as I got to my stand, I fell over because blew my knee out. I couldn't support myself. So bike falls on top of me, is burning me. I can't take my helmet off because my wrist is broken, and the bike's on top of me. Tony D calmly walks over to me, picks up the bike, puts it on the stand, picks me up, and he's like, good moto, kid, good moto. All right, so for the second moto, I need you to pick a better gate. That was a shitty gate for the first moto. We got to look gate selection, dude. Come on, we got to do better in the second moto. I'm like, Tony, I'm broken, dude. He's like, no, you're not. Hard Knocks is not broken. You are not a pussy. You paid to be here today. Do your laps. And
he may have not had some of the best influence parental-wise around him at this time of his life.
Wow.
But that's how we came up, man. That's what Hard Knocks racing means to me. That means, don't be a pussy. Go for it and get the job done. Do what you came there to do, and that's race and and be with your friends. And that's my induction into Hard Knocks, and that's my Tony D story for you right there.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I know we were talking about it a few weeks ago when we were pedaling, so I'm glad you finally got to call in, because last week you were going to do this, but what happened? You fell asleep on the couch?
I'm old, and you were running late.
I was running late. All right, cool. Well, appreciate you calling in, Joe.
All right, you guys got it. Frank, man, good sesh, man. Thanks for the info.
Cool, man.
See ya.
All right, take care, fellas.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave it open a little bit longer if anybody else does want to call in. I will say that, I haven't even told you any of this. That big reason why I wanted to start this is to give the average person that doesn't have a way to tell some good stories a way to do it. So at any time, somebody can call my number, 844-789-2367, leave up to an 8-minute story. I mean, Joe's phone call right there was probably less than 8 minutes. So 8 minutes is a long damn time to tell a story. So yeah, if you aren't watching live, or you can set your reminder for when the show's going to be around 8:30 or so, I turn the lines on. So I encourage anybody, because it gives you 100 entries into a YZ250 that I'm giving away. Tell them about that thing. You got to see it.
Looks like a nice bike.
I mean, I literally walked you in the garage and was
Yeah.
like, by the way, this is the bike that I'm giving away on the show. Let's get upstairs to start the show, because I think we had like 3 minutes to spare as we were walking up the stairs.
Free's a pretty good price.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So you said 100 entries. That's the.
Yeah, if you
Cool.
call and leave a message and it gets played on the show, 100 entries. You got 100 for coming in the show right now. So, all right, so let's do tech tips.
Okay.
Transform your comfort with Innovative Mechanical LLC, specializing in HVAC service for residential and commercial properties. They provide expert installation, maintenance, and repair. Their certified technicians ensure top-notch service, whether it's air conditioning, heating systems, or indoor air quality solutions. Serving Georgia since 1999, they prioritize customer satisfaction with prompt, reliable service at competitive rates. From routine maintenance to emergency repairs, trust Innovative Mechanical LLC for all your HVAC needs. Give them a call at 770-726-7407 or visit innovativemechanical.llc.com to schedule service and experience unparalleled comfort today. All right, we're back. Paid some more bills. Yeah, actually, do you know about the old Burnt Hickory motocross track that was here in the 70s? So Chad, who's Innovative Mechanical LLC, his grandparents ran that track. So he's big into the motocross community here. He's almost royalty, you would say, since he's
I got you. Cool.
part of the National. That was back in the day where
Gotcha.
Bob Hanna and all those guys would come in.
Sure.
So on the tech tips, I told you that we had a session. I just wanted to banter with you since you got a little bit of mechanical knowledge. Not
Little.
much, obviously. You can tell from talking with you. So, the reasons not to install power commanders was kind of interesting when you text me that. What's your theory with that?
Well,
And what should you install?
you shouldn't. You should put gas in it and drive it. So here's the thing. That these bikes are very well tuned. They really are, and that you're not going to gain a lot of additional horsepower with a power commander. That really, the only time that you should even consider a power commander is if you have a lot of modifications. Let's say that you remove the exhaust control valve, you have a full exhaust system.
The butterfly system that was
Which is a
kinda in it, right?
wonderful piece of engineering. And we could spend time talking about what that engineering is and what it actually does and why you need it and why it's a disaster to remove it and why your power commander isn't going to fix the running problem that it creates when you do remove it. There's a whole section there. But really the goal is that if you've made a drastic change to the breathing characteristics of the engine where it no longer runs well, then your options are have the ECU flashed or install a power commander. But when you look at how well these things run, that if you just want to install a power commander thinking that you're going to get a little more power, it's unlikely. It's more like that you're going to create an overheating issue due to advanced ignition timing, that you're going to end up with something that doesn't, its overall drivability is not as good. In other words, it won't idle as good, it won't start as good, it just overall, if you were to take a check mark and mark every box and been like, there's a few boxes that are better, but overall it's not as good. That I feel is the consensus. Here's something else that I'll mention that I have seen, as a quality analyst and digging into this research, we had found that and I'll just ask this question to the group. Who here has ever seen a control module that has failed with evidence of a power commander? So I ran the report.
Oh.
And I looked at the study.
I remember you telling me this.
And that there's almost a 1-to-1 correlation. In other words, that I saw a high incidence of evidence of wiring harnesses that have had power commanders in them from the harnesses that we called back, and ECU failures. So the very first thing that happens to me from a service standpoint, right, and I still run a little service thing. I fix stuff every day. I was working on stuff today. That anytime something doesn't have spark, if the fuel circuit is no longer working on the control module, First thing I do is look for a power commander, and then I disconnect it. And sometimes it'll fix it. And sometimes it doesn't fix it, and it needs a control module. Or sometimes it fixes it, and 3 weeks later it comes back, and now the control module has failed.
Yeah.
So just know this, that if you're installing a power commander, you are increasing the likelihood of replacing a very expensive part for a very small, if not even better experience. Know that.
Interesting. Yeah, that was cool to get that information on.
Yeah, no, it's real.
Let's see, because you sent me like 10 things, it feels like.
Oh, yeah, I probably just ran through some stuff, and you guys, you're welcome to, literally whatever question you've got,
Oh, yeah. How about if anybody listening that has a mechanical question?
Sure.
Freaking call in and hit us up with it. I feel like that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
So, yeah, lines I'm just going to leave open for the rest of the time. Even if we're talking, because that was one thing that Joe said. He's like, I'm going to wait till you're talking. There's a big delay. There's like a 20-second delay. So if you're waiting for us to stop talking, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I'll just see that you're calling. I'll answer it and probably put you on mute or just until I say something, just then start talking. So,
yeah.
Synthetic versus petroleum-based oils.
Oh boy, there's such a huge topic, and that's been around for 100 years, and synthetic oils really do have a lot of advantages. They're a smaller molecule. They can get down into crevices, at that scale, and basically work as a barrier to prevent metal-to-metal contact, right? So you could say that on one hand, the synthetic oils are more heat resistant, they boil off less, and they lubricate better. When? And it's like, okay, so where's the problem with synthetic oil? Well, what happens if the manufacturer didn't do all of the engine testing with that type of oil, and that they designed the metallurgy around the bearings, the gears, and everything for a specific grade of oil with a specific, and there's two things that they put in oil. It's zinc and phosphorus. That's what makes oil tough, and those two actually fight each other. And there's also EPA laws that limit the amount of those chemicals, those products that you can put into oils to make them really good. It's the reason there's a difference between a race oil that's non-EPA and something you can put in your Chevrolet, right? They're different.
Huh.
I
didn't know that.
Yeah. And that here's what you have to know about the oils. That let's say, for example, if it's Yamaha or if it's Suzuki or it's Honda, that they ran these things through simulated 200, 300,000 miles. They run them through all kinds of different loads and temperatures and all sorts of environments. And that then they test all kinds of oils. And many of the oils do not pass their recommendations. And I'm telling you right now that if these folks are recommending a non-synthetic oil in their engine, you are crazy to go against that. Now, I've seen some unusual failures with synthetics. I've seen things where transmission gears will gall, bearings will gall. And I personally think it has to do with the viscosity of how synthetic oils thin out when they heat up. That's speculation. I haven't actually seen the science to prove that. I just know that from some of the studies that I've seen that there's been evidence of wear on certain types of engine parts that do not occur with petroleum oils. So I'd come back to this thing. What did the manufacturer recommend for that engine oil? And if someone else says that their oil is better, do you think they did all the testing? And the answer is no. How do they know that that oil is better suited for the design of that engine?
Interesting.
Right? And Suzuki was by far the most stringent, even more than like Yamaha. Very specific. 80% of the oils they would never sign off on because they wouldn't pass the testing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I know like a lot of Kawasaki oil was made by Motul.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
And then
well, there's
Honda was,
and we can talk about that
Motul
too.
too.
So Motul is actually too small. That generally, like say for example, just from all the years of working for Suzuki, one of the main suppliers for Suzuki oil was Shell. And that what would happen is that if you're a little guy, right, if you're selling Purple Magic or whatever the hell you know, you're not moving enough volume to have enough profit to have an engineer specifically design and then formulate that oil. What you're doing is you're taking the oil from a manufacturer. You may be able to have an additive added to it.
Yeah.
And then you reband it. You what's the word that I'm looking for? Label it, brand it. You relabel it with your packaging, claiming a whole bunch of things that probably aren't actually true.
Yeah.
The
sales guys.
Even even the manufacturers, right? These large Honda does not make oil. Honda has a supplier that they get their oil from. They run it through a testing protocol. Then they have it formulated with some small changes to their base stocks, and then they resell it as their certified oil.
Yeah.
Really what you're getting from Yamalube or Honda oil, right? H4, whatever you're buying. Yeah.
Because even so, if you remember
That
back
oil,
to when the
yeah.
4-strokes, they had the separate things.
Yeah.
There was one with Molly and one without, and you had
Yeah.
to put they had two different engines in, like the 04
Absolutely,
CRF250.
that's exactly right. You know, the thing that you get with
CRF
the
250R,
super crazy manufacturer's oil is it's been tested and certified to pass the durability standards for that engine. That if you're outside of that, you don't know. And if you think the guy selling you the oil again knows more about that than the engineer that designed it and tested it, you're crazy. It's a ludicrous statement to think that could be true.
Huh. Well, I'm glad I brought that one up out of the other ones that I saw.
Let me just add this. Viscosity rules. So one of the most important things that you can do for the longevity of engine oil, the longevity of an engine, is increase the viscosity. So let me just ask this. Why are all of the oils going 0, 30, 5, 20? Why are they doing this? And it has to do with mechanical drag of the oil, and it has to do with emissions. It has absolutely nothing to do with the durability of the engine. Okay, let me just ask another thing. So I dug into this really deep, and I wanted to know the numbers. What is the difference in efficiency between 2050 and 030?
Shit, I don't know.
Less than 3%. It's non-existent. What's 3% change in your... So less than 3% fuel economy difference between the super heavy oil and the super light oil.
Okay.
In like a modern V8. There's almost no difference. Try it. So what I would do is challenge someone. Go put 2050 in your truck, or put the the 030 or the, and usually they won't tell you 030 in a truck because of the load that it's more like 1030, right? And we could talk about all the reasons those are. But go check the fuel efficiency on it in a drive it down the highway a very specific distance, reset the fuel indicator, measure what it is for that day. Drain the shit out of it, go put 2050 in it, go do the same test. You will have a small change in fuel economy. But between the drastic changes in those oils, less than 3%. So it's like, and I've seen the studies, there is a durability improvement due to a heavier oil. So there's that, right? So it's like oil's this deep, this really deep, so it's like, who's playing it straight, who's being honest with us, who, and it's like, what's good and what's bad. I can tell you the perspective from the Yamalube guys, right? And I'm trying to think of the guy that ran been there for 30 years at Yamaha over Yamalube. Because Yamalube, we could all argue, but Yamalube is probably the most known and trusted oil in the motorsports industry, full stop. Full stop, right? Who else is better known than Yamalube? I don't think anyone. It's not any Suzuki oils. It's not Honda, right? It's really not.
Yeah.
It's Yamalube.
Interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah, and coming from the horse's mouth, and they refuse. By the way, that department doesn't make a lot of money. They don't. What they do is they sell really good oil with really good additive packages, and they use it to promote the durability and reliability branding of Yamaha. It's not meant to be a profit generator for the company. It's all about marketing and branding. And that they absolutely disclose that what most oil manufacturers do is they cut out all the expensive shit that makes the oil really good. They slap some marketing sticker and they take the margins. And that they leave you with a product that's not as good. So knowing how Yamaha operates that business segment, knowing what their goals are, pretty hard to go wrong with the Yamalube product, right? And I'm not right. I mean, just what I know internally, that is really good oil.
Yeah. No, honestly, if you were to go look at my shelf right now, it's 90% Yamalube.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You just like everyone else, man.
Yeah.
And it's like for all the reasons that people realize it's really good oil, and they realize that it's expensive, but it's still really good oil for its price. They don't make money on it. What other stuff you think is good, someone's gotten a good deal on that oil, it's just not you. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you for that info. That was really cool.
Yeah, man.
So one of my next segments, and I don't even think I told you about this, but I told you I blew my knee out, right?
Knee injury surgery.
Yeah. The week before my surgery, 3 of my bikes were stolen. And then the insurance for money from that and being off a bike and like, what do I do with my time, created this situation that you're sitting in right now. Oh, really? So one of my segments is showcasing a stolen bike. And because I see them all the time, people posted, this happened to me, and I'll reach out to them like, hey, I have a show. And honestly, what I do with this too is I offer 500 entries into that giveaway if somebody somehow listening to this helps recover this bike. So this particular bike, this is another case. In fact, on the second episode, we talked about the classic thing, I'm sure you've heard of it, where bring the bike to me. I'll pay you $200 more type of deal, right? So this poor dude, from what I can tell, Trent, I don't want to butcher his last name, he drove from Kentucky to Decatur with his CRF 450. No, sorry, 23 CRF 250. Well, it says X, but wouldn't that be RX? Either way, he actually has a picture of the dude who stole it from him, too. So that is the guy that stole the bike from him. So if you were meeting a guy in Atlanta, and that's him, he is going to take your shit. But people, I'm telling you, I just posted a bike for sale. It's a project bike. I had a 17 YZ 450 FX, given a plug in case anybody hears this needs one. Yeah, as soon as you post it, within about 5 hours, you get 3 different messages from the same different people, because one's offering or trying to get you to come to Smyrna, the next one's trying to get you to come to Marietta, and the other one's trying to get you to come to Decatur. And it's always the same thing. Hey, can you meet today? Yeah, okay. I'd be able to meet with you later today. You know what? I'm going to find the message right here, because as soon as you tell them, like, I'm not driving to you, they just lose contact with you. All right, so yeah, here it is. Is this still available? It is. Are you available today? Depending on the time, I might be able to, and I say this specific to let them know I'm not coming to them. So I said, what time would you be in the Dallas area? I'm in South Fulton. Okay, when will you be able to get up this way? I don't have a truck. Well, let me know when you can get one. End the conversation, because they know at that point I'm not going to drive to them. But if they get a little whiff of, oh yeah, like I maybe would consider driving to you, or like they're very good at this game.
And what do they do if you drive there with your vehicle?
So what they'll end up doing with this, I guess you don't kind of know this whole spiel that they do, is they've got a few little tricks with it. And there's actually one other guy that I sold a bike to that told me a different thing that really blew me away. So the main one is they'll just try the whole, all right, let me just try to take it around the block or whatever. And then they'll do one loop and then they're gone. You've never seen that bike again. And of course, you go to the police about it, they don't care. They don't do anything about it. They got real crimes to worry about, not a stolen dirt bike. So they,
with the bill of sale.
the other thing that they'll do is, like, if you demand to hold the cash, then they'll give you a thing of cash. It's fake bills. So by the time that they're a lot of times, one of the dudes on the second show said the guy was like, all right, here's the money, and went to, like, throw it to him, but missed, and it, like, landed on the trailer, fires up the bike. By the time the guy gets the money, opens it up, these are fake bills, bike's gone. Wow. A guy that bought a dirt bike from me, this is 5 years ago or so, he was telling me about how that happened to him, and as soon as it was a street bike the guy was selling. Met the guy somewhere, I think in the, like, Norcross area or whatever, and he was, like a lot of guys in the South have a gun strapped to their side. So as soon as the kid saw that gun on his side, he pulled his out.
Oh.
And at that point, the guy was at least smart about it, and he's like, this bike is not worth my life, dude. Like, just take the thing. I'm not going to fight you on it. And he just let him have it. So I give that guy a lot of credit, and I told him that to his face. I was like,
you're smart.
Yeah, like, that was a better way to do it than get all fucking, oh, I'm a man and nobody's going to take my shit. It's a fucking motorcycle, dude. Your life's not worth it.
Yeah.
Unless there's a really cool jump that you want to try, then you could maybe talk yourself into doing that kind of shit. But, but yeah, so either way, people, if somebody's trying to get you to drive to them, do not drive to them. If they want a dirt bike bad enough, they will come to you. And even then, have things in place. Like, and for this particular one, and a lot of the times, the guy's like, oh, my buddy's coming with the truck, he's running late. Red flags. The sad part in this is almost anybody you talk to with this, when you're like, how did you let this happen? They're like, man, something was telling me this was wrong, but I still let them do it. It's like, if something's telling you it's wrong, something's wrong. Don't, like, go with your instincts. You know what I mean? So.
Gotcha, man. That's horrible.
Yeah.
That's
it happens all the
absolutely
time.
horrible.
And also, I just insured my 450. It's like, I think $100 a year.
Yeah, it's a couple $100 or something.
It's stupid cheap.
Yeah, you just do it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Get your bikes insured.
Right.
All right. Videos submitted. I wanted to share this one with you
Sure.
because it's just, to me, a really cool video. I saw this guy post this on Everything Dirt, and I think this is going to bring you back to some racing adventures of your own, and it's going to end in maybe some heartbreak. So let's see what we got here. So this kid, Alex Heckman, I think that's his last name. I've actually friended him since then and seen a bunch of cool videos from him. He just was at Red's Bud and hucked the leap for the first time. You know how the grass is on the side? He landed in that pocket of the grass wall in the landing on the first attempt. And I was like, oh. So I'm going to try to get that video for maybe one of the next shows. But, all right, here we go. Yeah, Alex Heckman. Kid's a damn good rider, too.
RPM's about right. That'll be a good start. Yeah.
So what was really interesting about this video is kind of the back and forth chicken game he plays with the guy in first. Like, look how close he, like, that's some trust right there, right?
Yeah. He's out there on a little smoker too, man. That looks pretty good. Boy, you gotta, yeah, I wouldn't think that outside line. You could make that up there, you know. The inside's definitely better right there. That 347, his line choices are good, man. A little bit of a whip, I saw it.
Sitting down a little too early, though, but...
Yeah, you noticed that, too. I think he might be just a hair too far forward on his bike.
And you can kind of tell that he's holding them up a good bit, and that's what I liked about it. And he keeps trying this big huck because, I mean, well, the kid's just got some balls, but look how close he landed to him.
Yeah. He looks like he's a pretty good rider, though, and he's not going to crash in front of you, you know?
Also, when I think the kid's probably, like, in the 18-ish range from the pictures I've seen, so...
He needs to
think about the dumb shit we would do trusting other people.
good. That rear shock's too stiff. It is. Yeah, look at that thing.
Yeah.
You want it to move, man. If it doesn't move, it doesn't absorb energy.
Oh, that was a big hook.
You know, I could pick up 2 to 3 seconds a lap on that guy just from suspension.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I've experienced it. All right, and then he doesn't go for the big hook on the outside now. He protects that
How
line.
far do you think that is? 70 feet?
I was going to say between 70 and 75, maybe
Yeah.
80.
I don't think it's 80.
I think the other one that he did right as he passed
Yeah,
the
that
kid
one
is a
might be.
little bit
That one
bigger.
felt just the way it felt. It felt like it could have been 80. You know, 80. The difference between 70 and 80 is a lot, man. You get anything over 80, and it's a big jump.
Was it this one? No, it wasn't this one. That was more of the one. And the nice thing with I like these kind of jumps too because it's more of the flow than it is like a booter. I've never been a big fan of booter jumps.
Yeah.
I think this is the big one.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, there's nothing out there too crazy on the track.
Yeah, that's probably closer to 80. Oh no! All that work and all that effort, and just loses it. So, yeah. No, I just thought that was like when I was watching it.
Yeah, man.
I was like, man, this is actually a really good video of just a good race. So,
yep.
Alex, keep it up. I'm gonna reach out to you about using the Rocco's Lead video because that was awesome. All right, let's run through a few more segments. We're almost done with them, and then we'll go to us bantering back a little bit back and forth some more because we got a few more big ones that I want to touch with you.
Okay.
All right, so this is really cool. This is one of the stories that's sent in to me. So let's listen to this. I'm going to cut our mics.
Hello, my name is J.D. Roche. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I've been riding and racing dirt bikes for 50 years. And the story I'm about to tell you is actually 100% true, not making any of it up. So the year is about 1990, maybe 91, pretty sure it was 1990. I'm living in western Pennsylvania, which was a great place to grow up and ride and race dirt bikes because within an hour and a half of my house, I had Steel City, High Point, Motocross, Pleasure Valley, and 3 or 4 other tracks to race at. Plus, we had the GNCC series that did a lot of the races in Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. That started by the Coombs family, and they're obviously from Morgantown. So very prominent in the area and a lot of good racing. So I'm racing the GNCC series. I think I'm racing plus 25 class. I'm doing pretty well, winning some, getting a lot of seconds, a lot of thirds. I'm probably in second in the points. And during the summer break, I decide to race the Pennsylvania State Championship motocross. So it was my first real shot at motocross racing on a semi-serious basis. And I signed up for, I think it was 250C. Again, I'm an older guy, woods racer, and not older, but, older for motocross, woods racer. So I figured I'd sign up for 250C class, and it was a 5-race series. And it was High Point, Steel City, a local track called Challenger, another local track called Beaver Valley, and the final race was at Pleasure Valley. And at the time, Pleasure Valley had just recently opened up. So I go to the first 4 races. I do relatively well. Second, third, I think I might have won one, so I'm sitting pretty good in the points. And at the final race at Pleasure Valley, I show up for practice. I go out for practice, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, something like that, and I crash. And I don't remember a thing. I ring my bell severely, so bad that I come off the track and I'm just riding around the pit road in circles. And I did this about 10 times, and my buddy's up on the second tier looking down, and he's like, "Whoa, I got to go rescue Jay. Something's wrong." So stops me. Again, I don't remember this, so I remember pieces of it, but a lot of this was told to me by my buddy. So he stops me, asks me some questions, what day is it, what year is it, blah, 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 and I get them all wrong, right? Thing with concussion is you retain long-term memory, so you know who your name is, who your wife is, what your address is, but you don't have any short-term memory. You don't know what day it is, what week it is, what month it is. Obviously, he's concerned about me because I don't know any of the short-term memory stuff. Takes me back to my truck, takes my helmet off, lays me down in my van, and I lay there for probably 3 or 4 hours because we got there early in the morning. This was first practice out when this happened. So about noon, I start to feel better. I'm not obviously missing major parts of the day, but I'm starting to get a little more focused, and I realize I'm at a motocross race, and I want to race my motorcycle. I tell my buddy, hey, I'm going out for my moto, because I don't know if my first moto had already taken place or my second one was coming up or whatever, but I'm like insisting I'm racing. I'm going out there. I'm going to race. My buddy's like, you can't. You've got a concussion. You don't even know what day it is. You're not racing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm racing. So he secretly hides my helmet, and I can't find my helmet. So I'm scrambling. I'm asking, has anybody seen my helmet? Where's my helmet? Can't find my helmet. So then I start trying to borrow a helmet. My buddy must have told everybody around us, don't let him borrow a helmet because he can't ride. So I end up with a helmet. And I go to the line, and I'm the last one to the line because I don't remember drawing the spoon. I didn't go out for my first moto. I don't even know if it's the first or the second moto, but somehow I end up on the starting line. And I'm on the starting line. Everybody's revving their bike up, and people are looking at me, and I'm thinking, wow, I must be famous. Everybody's noticing me. And you know how the starter comes out, and he goes down the line, he holds the flag, and if you've got an issue, you raise your hand, and you got 1 minute to fix your bike. So he goes down the line, and he comes back to me, and he's like staring right at me, and I'm thinking, what the heck? He's not looking at me, right? Next thing I know, he waves the flag. Everybody shuts their bikes off but me. I keep mine running because I'm completely out of it, right? Guy walks straight towards me, and I'm like, wow, he looks really mad. Wonder what the heck. He's pissed at somebody, not thinking he's walking towards me. And, of course, he walks right over to me, puts his hand on my kill switch, shuts my bike off, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, are you all right? I'm like, no, I'm fine. I want to race. I'm ready. And it was Jeff Cernick. And Jeff, he's been around motorcycles his whole life, owns a dealership. He owns the track, Pleasure Valley. So he's got an inkling that something's wrong with me. And he starts asking me the basic concussion questions. What's your name? Blah, blah, blah. I get all that right. And then he asks what month it is. I have no idea. So I figured I'd just start with April. Meanwhile, it's October. So I just rattle through the months. I'm like, it's April, May, June, July, August, September, October. And he goes, yeah, it's October. And he looks at me and he said, take your helmet off. I'm like, no, I want to race. He looks at me and he said, if I give you your money back, will you take your helmet off and leave the starting line? And I knew I had a concussion. I knew, I wasn't right. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. So I take my helmet off, and the helmet that I had on my head, and I swear to God, I'm not making this up, was one of those half-helmet street bikes like the Hessians used to wear in World War I that had the spike on it. No padding, half helmet, spike on it. And I'm on the starting line of a motocross race. I look at the helmet, and I'm like, I got to go back to the truck. and that's the story. So I try to race a motocross race with a street bike helmet with no padding that had a spike on the top. Good thing I didn't get out there because obviously if I would have crashed, it would have cracked my noggin. But everyone around me certainly got a big laugh. And as a matter of fact, my buddy that hid my helmet, he had made his way over to the track, and he saw me on there, and he knew that they weren't going to let me race, obviously. They were going to flag me, and I look over, and he's just laughing hysterically. So that's my story. sticking to it.
Yeah, that's
Thank
awesome.
you. Talk to you later. Bye.
Yeah, that's what this show is about, people. If you got a good story like that or you got a friend with one, again, please call in anytime. You can leave a voicemail, 844-789-2367. And in fact, you don't get it because you're here. And if you do get it, I don't want you to say it, but there's a dad joke in my phone number. And so I said I'd give somebody 20 points if they figure out the dad joke. And nobody's figured it out yet. But there is a dad joke in that 844-789-2367. So, all right. So those are the segments before the final one before we completely end the show. So this is something 2 years ago when I reached out to you that I had an idea and wanted to have you on. You told me about the time you were working at Yamaha, and that was also the same time that James Stewart got arrested for the police lights on the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you were standing, because I actually went back. I still had the message. You were right next to Rob Lapuznak. Am I saying that right? The executive vice president, the night that James got arrested for impersonating the officer, and you guys weren't sure if you had to drive to Florida to bail him out right before the Atlanta round.
Oh,
so
yeah.
what do you recall about that?
So I may have called you when I was working at Yamaha, but that actually had occurred with Suzuki Motor Corporation here in the Marietta location. So Rod Lapuznak was the national sales manager for Suzuki.
I thought James was on the Yamaha when he got arrested for that.
No, it was obvious. No, it was definitely Suzuki. No, I'm 100%. Unless if he had been arrested 2 times, but I don't think so. The Atlanta Supercross. I remember the night very clearly. So Rod Lapuznak, national sales manager, he was as high as you could go up in sales. Mm-hmm. So there was Pat. I'm trying to remember Pat's last name. So to give this some hierarchy, you'd have Rod Lapuznak, then you'd have Pat. Pat signed all the factory contracts for all the riders.
I remember you telling me that one time. You were like, he signs Chad Reed's checks.
Yeah. So he's the one that came up with all the funding. Because realistically, racing is a form of marketing, and it's an attempt to sell product. One of Suzuki's mottos was, "Win on Sunday."
What?
Sell
on Monday.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah, almost all the Japanese manufacturers, that's their motto.
So they put a tremendous amount of money into marketing, and it was a marketing deal, and Ricky cost a lot of money.
No, I bet.
Ricky cost a lot of money.
Yeah, no, 5.
Yeah, Ricky cost. So the number that I saw kicked around for Ricky, real story, was that Ricky's his contract was worth more money than all the profit from the RM sales in its history. That's how much money. Yeah, and Stewart, I never got the number, but I remember very clearly. It was later. We were all working. I think it was already past 5 o'clock. Phone rings in. Rod's right there. I think the phone came in with Dan. Dan was one step below Rod. Mm-hmm. And the message comes in, that Bubba was in jail, and that then I hear over the phones. It's like, why? He was caught impersonating a police officer. And what he had done at the airport when he had gotten in, he took his rental car. He had one of the dome lights that he had stuck on top of his Suzuki rental car, and that he was pulling people over, acting as if he were a police officer.
Yeah.
And we're talking the night of Supercross, and it was horrendous to get that dude bailed out. But
really?
They did, and I forget, and I don't remember what the dollar was. It $1 million? It was something like stupid to set the bail for that.
Yeah, bails and all that stuff is always ridiculously high.
It was ridiculous to get him bailed out.
I don't know that personally.
Yeah, right. But anyhow, they got him bailed out, and I'm trying to remember how he did. Because Suzuki was really good. We had our own row. We had an entire row for Suzuki people. That was dedicated to us at all the Supercrosses. So we always had free tickets. Yeah. but yeah, man, Rod Lapuznak, and I'll just give you a little bit more on him. At the time, when things, because we were all in that Marietta location, I think Rod knew that location was going to get closed, but he couldn't say it. Rod had already been working a deal with Triumph, and one of the things he had told me, this was before that he was going to go to work for Triumph, and that they were going to develop a motocross bike, and that he was going to have Ricky help design it.
Well, that all came to fruition.
And so on LinkedIn, just this year, when I saw the whole thing come out, first thing I did, man. So Rod is now president, Triumph Motorcycles.
Oh, okay. I knew I heard that.
He's
name
the
from
president. He runs the damn show. So I jump on there. I'm like, hey, bro, that's awesome. I am so happy that you actually pulled this off. And it's like, good for you, man. And he asked me a few questions on what I was doing, and then he told me what he had got. And it doesn't surprise me at all that he had moved to that level of position.
Yeah.
But just so you know, Rod already had been working that.
Yeah.
Before any of that even existed.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how, when you see, and it was really kind of a, I'm just wondering if I should say this.
Well, maybe don't. But
Well, no, there's no real harm in it, and I think that it's kind of good for people to realize that. So we spent all that money buying some of the fastest riders in the world, and that it had no statistical impact on sales, because it's not as if we didn't run the numbers.
So.
And that Suzuki of SMC really looked down on it because they saw it as that you spent all this money and we've got no return.
So is that why you feel that they kind of backed off like they did?
No. So I know a lot about what they did, and I think Suzuki is actually a lot smarter than Yamaha. Is what I think. So that Suzuki chose to downsize its position in the U.S. market. To give you some facts on Suzuki, Suzuki sells more cars.
Yeah.
More Suzuki cars in Japan than Toyota or Honda.
Yep.
Suzuki is a larger company than Yamaha worldwide. And that when Suzuki looked at the last 10, 15 years of profit in the U.S. market, here's the problem with the U.S. market. There's a lot of political tape. The emission standards are high. The liability for a corporation is high. And that it's really hard to make money in the U.S. And that what Suzuki chose to do was to take all of that energy and to put it into emerging markets that did not have as much political red tape, like India. So they put the money where they thought the markets could expand and that they could be more successful as a company, because they had assessed over X number of years that the U.S. climate and the business model here in Suzuki for the Japanese was not profitable. So Suzuki could have chosen to have been what they were in, let's say, for example, the early 2000s, where they were, they were really, they sold more GSXRs than anyone.
Yep.
They chose to not do that. It was an active. It's not that they couldn't do it. It was an active choice. It was a choice based on the product that they bring into the U.S. It was all based on market strategy, and it was really based on where they want to put their energy, because the U.S. is tough. I'll give you an example. I pulled something like 700 stickers off of I'm trying to think of the model designation for their race four-wheeler, the
LTZ 400 or LTZ 450?
450R.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what happened with that. We sold a few of those in California. The sticker was wrong for the green EPA.
Oh.
The governor required that we buy all those back what happened. State of California. Osamu Suzuki, that's round eye number 1, right? That's the president of SMC, stated that we would never have that product line in the U.S. market ever again. He sold every one of those things. He exported them to other countries. We pulled the incorrect sticker off of them. You're never going to see that product ever in the U.S. market because of what California did.
Holy crap, that's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, there's a lot. There's a lot of stories. So that's just part of the political tape, the red tape. You know, when you find someone and require that they buy product back because of an incorrect labeled sticker, you're probably outside of the range of rational.
Yeah.
And that's what Osama did, right? Because U.S. market, it's like U.S. market, yeah, okay. They're just another vendor. See ya.
No, and honestly,
yeah,
looking at all the stuff that's kind of happened since then, it kind of makes sense.
Oh, they're very smart.
Yeah.
And Suzuki's actually, if you look at their financials, if you go look at their corporate, right, because they're publicly owned companies, and just go dig into their financials. Suzuki's in a much stronger position than Yamaha financially.
Huh.
Just not here in the U.S.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, they just don't play.
Because that's the bubble that most of us are in, so that's all we know.
And truthfully, Suzuki makes a wonderful product. They
yeah.
make wonderful
and honestly,
product.
look at the stuff that's happened. It can still win. Ken has won on it recently. So I don't know how much you still follow with Supercross and stuff, but yeah, I mean,
it's still
even last summer he was one of the people that actually led a race against Jet.
Yeah,
and Jet went undefeated.
I don't know how much money, how much marketing, how much energy they're putting into those segments anymore. I just don't know. You know, I don't work for the company, and I don't know enough people there now that would be willing to confide in, you know, me as an outsider, because it's like, God, I don't know what the hell Frank will say.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just not going to, you know.
The interesting thing, too, is so from 2008 to 2017 was the same plastic. So the big joke is the fact the bike hasn't changed since 2005. That's like a bunch of memes that get made and shit like that.
It's mostly true. It's true, and it's not.
Like the frames and a lot of stuff did change from the 2008 to the 17. Like in 2014, they changed a good bit. They went to that bullshit air fork stuff for a little bit. But
that was a horrible decision.
Yeah.
It was a horrible decision.
Have you messed with those forks?
Yeah, I know.
Dude, it takes like 2 hours to just redo fork seals on them.
Well, and
they're a nightmare.
You know, so the advantage is, you know, that if you have a heavy mechanical spring and you're adding unsprung mass to it, that the physics state that if you can reduce that mass, you can improve the rebound performance of the fork. And on paper, it all looks good. You know, the engineering looks sound, but the problem is that in a real world application, the amount that you have to chase those air forks to get them to keep them good is not worth the very small gains that actually exist. You know, and it's just, and we knew that. You know, I still remember when the air forks came, and I look at this, it's like, dude, this is going to be a fad. This is going to blow out in 2 years.
Yeah.
That's what I said. This will not end well. The engineering on this is not sound. And you know, that was
I think Yamaha's the only one that didn't jump on that bandwagon.
Well, yeah, probably pretty smart. And the Japanese are very careful. They're very methodical. They put a lot of testing and design into a certain, you know, whatever, a frame. And to get them to make a change, it has to go through all the validation stages. You know, and for the Japanese, there has to be reason to do it. Mm-hmm. You know, and if anything, you know, all the manufacturers are this way, but Suzuki and Yamaha are especially this way. When you look at their engineering, they have standard PW50, whatever. Yeah. They have standardized engineering that they've been mass producing for decades with minimal change to it. But what you don't see, and I almost wish that the manufacturers would make a documentation to help the average consumer grasp the magnitude of the testing that they do to validate a design. The vibration rooms, the corrosion rooms, the 100,000 miles of slapping the bar back and forth to see where the zip tie wears, you know, and and I think that there was actually a section that we were gonna hit this a little bit. But here's the thing that you don't know with this aftermarket junk. It hasn't been validated. It hasn't been through all the testing protocols. That these guys, there is the probability of it being as good as the OEM stuff is almost, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
You know, it's just and the Japanese are crippled by a problem. That their problem is, let's say for example, side by sides. We've got Can-Ams. We've got, you know, Can-Am's a big one, man. They've got some flashy big shit, and is it fucking junk? And where you'll have something like your YXZ 1000.
Yeah.
You know, they went through 5 years of testing before they ever pushed the green button. Yeah. And a company like Can-Am will have 4 new product line that evolves to whatever the market wants. And by the time Yamaha has done all the testing, shifter paddles, it's outdated.
Yeah.
And people don't buy it, but it's a lot like your Toyota. You'll put 300,000 miles on it and be like, yeah, man, I haven't even replaced the battery. Yeah. Right? You know, where if it's a Can-Am, you replaced every fucking part on it 3 times.
No, it's funny. As soon as you started talking about aftermarkets, my thought immediately went to side-by-sides because I've got buddies that will buy them and put 40 grand into them.
Yeah.
Every time I talk to them, they're talking about how it's broken.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, my side-by-side stock, I beat the shit out of it.
Nothing's ever broken.
Not a thing.
And that's what it is to own.
I will send that thing over some jumps, too.
And that's what it is to own something Japanese.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, when folks look at a Can, it's like it's trick. It's got big wheels. It's like, look at this.
Have you been in one?
Dude, they're cool, man.
Dude, my buddy works for Can-Am, and he let me drive the 189 horsepower one at Durhamtown. I felt like I was in a $500,000 trophy truck. It was unreal.
Yeah.
But
But
I don't know the reliability side of them.
But the problem,
cool.
Yes. And from a marketing and sales standpoint, they sell the hell out of them.
Yeah.
But it'll never be what the Japanese do. Yeah. Because the American model and the rate at which they redesign things makes it impossible. They can't get through all the Japanese can't get through the testing by the time the Americans have the new product developed.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you want to buy something that's reliable, that's dependable, that will hold its resale, that you can get parts for? Or do you want to buy a, you know, Can-Am? Have a nice day, dude. Or a Polaris. God help us all.
I actually had a deal with them to come on to my next show as a sponsor, so I think I just lost that. Thanks, Frank.
Oh, gotcha.
Jeez, I didn't. Yeah. I'm fucking with you.
Well, yeah, and you know what? Even the you know they would have no they would have no recourse. It's like go show me your testing protocol, and then let's compare it to the Japanese.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, you look at a bent piece of aluminum, and it's like, do you know what the Japanese went through to get that bent piece of aluminum? Do you know what they did to come up with that? Do you know how much testing went into that? That's not just a bent piece of aluminum.
Yeah. So one of the more final ones, and then that, of course, if there's other stories you want to get into. So this was also a message you sent me at the very bottom there.
Yeah.
And you've kind of touched on it a little bit, the bold
Mechanical,
part.
So
No, the very, hold on. Right here. Come back a little bit.
Oh.
This very bold part right there, you text me that. Do you want to dive into that or not really?
I mean,
you kind of touched on it a good bit here and there.
It's such a deep topic, and it's really hard to see. I mean, it breaks too many of your rules, you know, because the first comparison and contrast that I would have would be the election this year, and all and all the propaganda, and all the what are blatant lies when you go and do some research.
And to know what he's talking about, I have very few rules for this show. I tell people don't get into politics, don't get into religion. It's just a path we don't want to go to. Yeah. But if it ties into this,
well,
I mean,
so
it is
so without having any party favorite or any, you know the things. How about coronavirus? Did you read any of the books? Did you do any of the research?
No, and that's why I don't want to get into those kind of things, because I see how crazy it makes people.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you are putting way too much effort into something that you really don't know much about.
Yeah.
For either side, for either thing, it's like,
so I've
I
been
don't care. Like, I'm not going to let something affect my happiness and life like that. So I just distance myself.
I've been following Congress and all of their meetings, because they post those on the Wuhan virus. I read RFK's book on the 23 analysts that spent 3 years doing research to understand what are provable facts based on that. And this is what I'd say, just kind of an overarching theme, that the virus came out of the Wuhan laboratory in China. We funded it. They'd been working on gain of research for a number of years, and that it got out, and that it infected a lot of people, and we covered it up, and we then created a vaccination that was that may have existed before the release of the agent. It's possible. That's unknown, but and that the companies that created this made billions of dollars on the backside, on both sides. So in other words, the companies that were funding the research also created the virus, right? So they created you have a problem and a cure, and you've got billions of dollars.
So how does that tie into?
So how it ties in is that they lied to the American people. They told us that it was a naturally occurring phenomenon, and that the Chinese did not. And to say it was a Chinese virus is a horrible statement, because the reality is it occurred in China. They did the research in China. It got out in China, but we funded it. So it's not exactly a China, we funded it. That the corporate world isn't different. The things you are told, the things that you are told, the things that you are led to believe, are not necessarily the things that are. And that you realize that to some degree these large corporations have to do that from a protective standpoint because of the legality of America today. And that on one hand there is no way to prevent it, there's no way out from it, but to also realize, to think that it doesn't exist, and to think that what they tell you is actually the full, transparent, and unbiased truth would be awfully naive.
Yeah.
Right. That would be, and just that's what it is. And it's
I
almost
see how it ties in then. And the question was pretty much said is basically like just the lies, manipulations for people at the top. Like it's just
it especially on when you deal with stuff with these large corporations, they're oftentimes dealing with people that have lost their lives. You're dealing with some very, very sensitive issues, and you're dealing with there's some points where maybe I know a little too much. Like say for example, and I'll say this broadly to keep me from being absolutely sued, that how how Volkswagen
the diesel
got
thing.
fined a little bit for some EPA
I had
regulation
one of those when that happened.
Well, let me just say this. They're not the only manufacturer. What if I were to go a little bit further and say that all the manufacturers do it?
Yeah.
And that I understand where the EPA test parameters are, how they're modified, and how they're not exactly what the government thinks they are. And that's probably enough. That's probably enough.
All right. Well,
right?
Don't say
that's
anymore.
Yeah. That's and it's like I can back the right conversation. It's like, you want to go? Okay. Right?
Might be pulled into litigation now.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think I've said anything that can really.
No, I'm not worried about it anyways. Honestly, there's disclaimers at the beginning of the show that
it's all
people
bullshit.
know that this is all made up. None of this is factual. This is
None of
just-
it's factual.
Yeah, this is just us
Coronavirus
bullshitting.
didn't happen. None of that. None of it happened.
Yeah, no, it didn't happen.
The funny thing is with the masks that really got me, and one of the first things that I did is I looked at the size of the virus, and I realized that this virus could not be seen with a microscope, and that you had to use an electron scope to see the virus, and that we're talking about something that is roughly 1/100th of a nanometer in diameter. And the fibers between your to put it in perspective would be like the difference in diameter between the Earth and the sun. And it's like the strand size and the gaps between the strands relative to the size of the virus, it's hundreds of one. It's like more than that. And it's like and it's just like rationally, it's like, that's not going to fucking work.
Yeah.
Right? In a sense, like, come on, guys. What and I don't know what they're. I mean, I just know from the size of the virus and the size of the filtration of the mask. It's not. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never bought into the mask thing, and
It's a damn
I
Grand
was
Canyon.
literally just yesterday or the day before
Yeah.
just thinking about the madness that was going on back then, and like how we're gonna be talking about back in my day this kind of thing happened. Like, it's just
No, man.
it's
It was engineered. It's been proven. They're trust me. It's been pretty well proven.
So that's most of the stuff that I had that I wanted to
man.
hit on. What other crazy crap you been into in your life with making ridiculous motors or trying to do land speed records? Any other ones we didn't hit on?
No, they're probably our projects. I mean, those are those are some pretty big ones.
I got one that was mind blown. So Chip and I, remember Chip Lincoln?
Oh yeah, I know Chip.
We were putting together.
By the way, I tried to get Chip a job at Yamaha too. I just couldn't get him in, man. I really like Chip.
Yeah,
I thought he's a super solid dude.
he is. So we were putting together an M109 one day, out of the crate,
Yeah.
and we were just like, why the hell don't they, like, where the cables clip into the clutches? And we said, I think happened to come by that day, and we're like, why can't you guys make this 1 inch longer? Explain to the people why the cables are the way they are.
Oh sure.
For that.
M109.
Well, just with any, because you broke it down to a manufacturing.
No. Yeah.
Process.
Well, there's a lot of things to understand about the M109, and one of the problems that it would occur, and that one of the customers' complaint on M109, and this bike's not even in production now, but nevertheless, was that if you let the clutch out pretty violently, it will feel as if the clutch is trying to be pulled out of your hands. And the reason, have you ever experienced that on an M109?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah, it definitely gives you some feedback. It's really weird, So in other words, real hard acceleration, you let the clutch out, it almost feels as if the clutch is pushing back on your fingers with some additional force. It gives you some feedback. Well, and the reason that it does is because the engine is rubber mounted and the cable is strapped in a way that it moves. And, well, let me just say this. The standard free play specification for just about any motorcycle on the planet fucking Earth is 10 to 15 millimeters between the lever and the perch, right? Not at the end, but between the 2 points.
Okay.
Right? No. I'm saying that wrong. Between the end of the ball is 10 to 15 millimeters this way.
Okay.
And that this required 20 to 25 millimeters of free play. And the reason being is because the motor's rubber mounted, and that as the motor twists in the chassis, which they had reasons for doing that it would start to tighten up the clutch a little bit. And that what was happening is that people were burning these things to the ground because they were putting in the standard free play. That's one of those things that go back to the testing, and what people thought was what you were saying. Why not make the fucking cable this much longer? It's like, no. The problem is all of that. The problem wasn't the distance on the actual cable.
So I'm glad we went down that rabbit hole because that was interesting. But I'm actually talking about the electrical connection.
Oh, the
cables
electrical connector.
that go
okay.
into
Oh, gotcha.
the mounts of it.
Again, dude, I just know a lot of
Yeah,
stuff
I know.
about
I'm
this
glad
product.
I brought that up. That's awesome.
So
we were just bitching because, like, you had to really fight to get the thing connected in. You had to route it a certain way. If you didn't route it this way on this bar, they wouldn't connect in, or they would just, like, why can't you just give us 1 more inch on any of the electrical connections, basically, is what we talked about.
mostly cost. A lot of it can be vibration. A lot of it can be water contamination. You know, that you have to realize that from a design standpoint that they put these things in large drowning baths and that they test them for corrosion resistance, and that if you start to add some length to a wire and you have a drip of water running down it 10,000 times, it may cause corrosion in a connector, and that they designed it in a very specific way. Well, let's just roll this design methodology back just a couple of steps and just talk about overall design and maybe ideology is wrong, but just the methodology behind design. You want items to be as inexpensive as possible. You want them to be as durable as possible, and that if we go back to the early 1900s, Thomas Edison and the light bulb.
Okay.
The very first light bulbs would fail really fast. General Electric started to work on these light bulbs and got these light bulbs where they work so good that they would virtually never fail, and it almost bankrupted their company. They almost went out of business because their light bulbs were too good. People never had to replace them. And this is where planned obsolescence, right, came into play, early 1900s. And then what they started to do after they almost lost their shirt, they figured out that they needed to design the bulb where it would fail within a certain number of life cycles. And the whole concept of planned obsolescence, it's designed to fail. Well, engineering has evolved from that. Nothing is designed to fail today. It's actually designed a different way. It's designed as cheap, I'll just use the word cheap, as inexpensive as you can get it, and then yet meet all the reliability, design, performance characteristics. And it's designed, right? So if you design a paper clip today, what gauge of metal? How hard's the metal? There's all of this design stuff, and the design methodology is that you want it to be as inexpensive as possible and to perform as well as possible with as least materials as possible. And if you don't do that, you're fucked. Because guess what happens with the next company that can design something cheaper, better?
Well,
they're going to push you out.
They're going to push you out.
So planned obsolescence really doesn't exist. So when you start talking about something like wire length, copper's expensive.
Yeah.
Copper's very expensive. And why in the world would you mass produce 1 million items that would cost X in copper when there was no design benefit other than being a pain in the ass? Here's another thing that has to be recognized. And I've seen some pushback from some engineers on this a little bit, where they tell me it's not real, but I don't fucking believe them. Like Yamaha has told me, I'm Chris Gray, design engineer, Yamaha Motor Corporation, right? So I'm going to drop a name of real people. Would tell me no, Frank. And then I'd push on them a little bit, like, yeah, kind of. They had, to this next statement, I've even told you what it is that I'm going to go after. That when you work on something, some things are a fucking pain in the ass to work on. It just doesn't seem like they put any energy into it. That the reality is that these bikes are assembled as efficiently, or designed as efficiently as they can be for being assembled on a production line. And that chances are, if there's something, if they can move a mount or change something to increase their efficiency from a production standpoint, they'll do it. But there is, and I'm not going to say no, because Chris might even hear this, there is little design input based on serviceability. Yamaha tells me no. I say bullshit.
Well, I mean,
and I love Chris, man.
You see certain things. Like a good example would be the oil change on the Suzuki V-Star 650s. You used to, or not Suzuki, Yamaha V-Star 650 used to have to remove the exhaust.
Oh yeah, to get the front cover off the
oil change.
Yeah, on
the
the 535, 700, 750, the whole damn product line did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I'm
so
aware.
there, but at some
perfect
point,
example.
They
like,
did go, oh, this is a problem. We do need to change this. So I do feel like they do put some of that.
There you go. There's
it.
The counter. How many years later? Into what degree? And how about the fucking rest of it?
And honestly, I feel like it's it is, like you said earlier, I've always felt it's a 5-year window.
Well,
when they finally go, ooh, we should probably not do that.
And I'd say, do you think that they took into consideration serviceability for an engine rebuild? Probably not. An oil change? Man, if you got people complaining, it was $600 to change oil on this fucking thing.
Yeah.
Right? That's a consumer problem that then the sales department would push to the service side and be like, what are you guys doing over there?
Yeah, because that's got to get out to the
Why
public.
are you charging a customer $600 to change the oil, you thieves? Right?
So one interesting thing that kind of goes along those things that has gone on for
and you look at that whole design, just to go a little bit further.
Okay.
It was a cartridge filter. It had an O-ring that if you didn't get the right O-ring in it, it had an outer O-ring. Then you could put the filter in backwards. Do you know what happens?
Yeah.
You know what happens if you don't get the filter in the right direction?
Yeah, well,
it cuts off the oil supply to the engine. It oil starves the engine and seizes the engine.
Yeah.
Because and it's like, here's the other thing. If you look at the filter, is there any up? No. How the hell do you know which way the filter goes in? You better be looking at it. Oh, well, but what happens when you pull the bolts out? Everything falls out before you have a chance to see it, and it's held in with a spring that the whole thing just flies out at you, and it's like, who the hell designed that? And it's like, okay. So if I take that example, Chris would be like, yes, we redesigned this stuff, Frank, because people were complaining. Okay, you got me. Tell me about the rest of it. Right? Right? So that would be the yes. But the vast majority of it, no. No.
So I noticed this on the 23YZ450, and this is something that you're going to be kind of probably shocked that they changed this. So what happens if the front, or if the chain comes off? What happens to a dirt bike most of the time?
It usually tears the cases up. It can do all kinds of damage. Oh, yeah.
They now have it, and it's because I believe KTM has done it now for a while. It's a separate boltable piece.
Oh, yeah.
So the clutch engagement piece now is 2 bolts. So if the chain comes off, snaps it.
Good design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, how long? How long? 73?
Yeah.
73 to 2023 until they finally put that piece in to
You know what my statement would be? Mr. Customer, please stop taking off your ugly fucking chain guard. Please stop that.
Well,
right.
Here's the thing.
And I'm not saying but a lot of times when you have engine case damage, it's because they removed the guard because they didn't like it because it's fucking ugly. That's what.
But a lot of motocrossers would put a thicker guard on there to try to protect that from happening.
Right.
So I would I feel like most real racer would do that.
Yeah, but you're not in the. What do you think are the percentage of real racers?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In terms of total sales,
we've talked on this before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not it, dude.
Yeah.
you're probably in the 1%. You know.
I like to think I'm that with my riding as well.
Overall, it's probably true. It's probably,
no. 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Wait, now or in my prime? Was I ever have prime?
If you can make it to the top 5% local, you're pretty fat. And you really look. It's hard, man.
I don't know if I made it to that.
Yeah, I don't think I did either. I don't think I did either, man. I don't think so.
Well, man. I actually forgot to play one of my reads because I played during the Sent-In Stories because I was so excited to play that one because I knew it was going to be hilarious with the freaking helmet, the Nazi helmet that he borrowed. So here's my last read for the show.
For some reason, it seems like I've heard that story at some point.
These stories are brought to you by On Road Riders. Get on the road safely with On Road Riders. They offer Georgia-certified training through the Motorcycle Safety Foundation Basic Rider Course on both 2-wheels and 3-wheel motorcycles, enabling you to obtain your motorcycle license hassle-free. Their mission is to instill essential skills for safe motorcycle operation and save lives. You'll learn from certified coaches covering everything from clutch friction zone techniques to obstacle avoidance. They currently have 2 convenient locations, Mountain Motorsports in Conyers and Georgia's Best Fireworks in Villageville. At just 16 years old, with parental consent, you can enroll and upon a successful completion, receive a waiver for your Georgia DDS motorcycle license. Visit onroadriders.com to start riding safely today.
All right, so we're going to wrap the show up. Frank, since I had this concept, you were one of the first people I reached out to because I knew this would be an awesome show and be a lot of fun. So I'm glad it came in. Even though we almost missed the dates, I called Frank about 20 minutes before you're supposed to be here. He goes, I thought that was tomorrow. And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, with this, I had opened up a small dealership in Rock Springs and working 70 hours a week. The thing's killing me, man.
What's the name of the shop?
Victorines Performance LLC.
All right. So if you're anywhere in that area, obviously the guy knows his shit.
Yep.
Go see him. He'll get you taken care of.
Yep. I'd much rather sell junk than work on it, but, it's just there's no money in selling motorcycles.
Yeah.
There's no money in it.
Well, man, I think we're going to have to get you in for a second show. We're going to try to get some more awesome stories out of you and info, or hell, just have you just come in and talk about some of the mechanical stuff.
Yeah, just do tech tips, man.
Yeah, we could spend 8 hours of a show just doing that. So
well, and we could do comparison and contrast on some product. I can tell you almost immediately on what I think are good designs and what are things that are going to cause you problems. It's like, hey, Frank, check out this new Can-Am. What do you think about this? And I'll give you 10 things based on its design.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a good design, or that's a horrible piece of shit that you will hate. And these are the 3 reasons why.
Actually, I was looking at back some of the texts from 22, and you had even said that you thought about starting to do videos like that. And I was creeping through your Facebook trying to find the Suzuki 125. And I thought I saw a few videos where you were doing those.
So I had done some dry erase markers and just some theoretical stuff. So I talked a little bit about compression ratio, ignition timing, how 2-stroke engines actually work. There's some real basic stuff that people just, they don't understand. Especially like 2-strokes are gone. It's just 2-stroke. What?
Sir, I have a 125.
Yeah,
okay.
man, I'll
brand new one.
Yeah,
okay.
man. Smokers are awesome for a lot of reason, dude. They're light, they're nimble, they're easy on your pocketbook to maintain. The oil that you run can be biodegradable. If you can run it in your lake and then drink the shit, it's probably okay.
Yeah.
Well, just calling it for what it is. The TW3 oils are safe. But I mean, there's just a ton of stuff. Do you know that I published a book?
No.
Yeah, man. So if you type it into Google, if you have a chance to pull, I sell it on Amazon.
Really?
It's
Let's pull this thing up.
It's a top seller in that segment.
What's it called?
World's Greatest Carburetor Tuning Book. And I'm currently about 50% of the way on an electronics fuel injection book.
Is this it?
World's Greatest, let's see. Yeah, that's it.
Let's show the people this.
Yeah, man.
All right, so this is your book.
It's my book.
That you can get right off Amazon right now.
Yep.
Only $28. That is really cool.
Yeah, man. So if you come down to the preview.
Nope. Did I go too far?
Yeah, come on up. It's 203 pages. It's on its first iteration. It's all color. It has a lot of stuff in there that I never could talk about working for corporations that I knew. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of tuning stuff in there that was like, Frank, we will fire you on the spot if you do it. Right? No, seriously. There have been cases where you cannot tell people that, but it's true. No, Frank. Do not say that.
Interesting.
You were out of a job.
Is there like a pop-up section in it for me, or like
no.
Is there little coloring spots? I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get into it.
No, dude, it's simple, man.
I'm kidding.
But if you look into it, there's a couple of cool. So pull up.
Read samples.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe that. Yep. So that's kind of what the book looks like. And then there's that section. That's a dedication page. Yep. And there's my name. There's me. And then that's
you?
No. That's not me. That's just a dedication. There's special thanks if you go up there, right? There's special thanks, and Jim Kirkland, Captain Kirk, Director, Suzuki Motor Corporation, retired, and just some people that were really inspirational to me in my career, and the people that I've known, and Gene Talley, my God, and then there's just some pictures of me, just corporate world, man, and 5-star. A lot of people have bought this thing. Hasn't made me a millionaire, but it's made a little bit.
No, that's really cool. I didn't know you did that.
Well, part of my job was not only training, but technically I'm an instructional designer. I build e-learning modules and design content for people. So I had written so many books for companies. Hell, Yamaha, I think I had 7 or 8 books that I wrote for them. And it's like I'd like to have something myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next one is going to be an electronics / fuel injection book, and the real focus on that is going to be understanding power sports fuel injection systems, because there's no book out there full stop. There's not a single book out there that covers it. And then how to modify and tune fuel injection without a power commander. Once you know how the system works, once you know how all the sensors work, once you know...
I know I've heard about a lot of companies now jailbreaking and ECUs and
how to
yeah.
and write a whole book step by step on exactly how to tune it. And it's like I figured that might be pretty good.
So when are you
I'm
finishing?
about 50%. So currently the past couple of months, what I've been focusing on is I am running through a analytics certificate.
Okay.
That's what I'm working on, a data analytics certificate. More SQL and just some more data stuff. I actually like data. I like big data. I like there's a lot of information out there, but there's a lot of stuff you have to know to be able to extract it and get to it and then boil it down and show people 10 charts of really compelling data that may change their lives. Yeah.
Well, I said early on in the show about how I first met you and was blown away about just what is going on up there, and I think anybody who's watched or listened to the show now understands what I was talking about.
Well, yeah. So they the term for it is neural divergent. I'm kind of in that category a little bit. Where I'm just not typical. That high functioning Asperger's. I'm close to that. I have 9.
I didn't want to say that, but I was like,
I have 9 out of the 10 characteristics. I'm
yes.
not quite normal. I'm not quite, and I don't think a blessing actually.
Yeah.
I think like any of the people that are born that way, all agree with that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. There's a point where I really realized where I really would hope that I saw less in the world. It would be a lot easier place for me.
Yeah. No, I can understand
just
that.
Especially from the corporate stuff, because all the lies and all the manipulate, it just, especially through all the years, it's like, guys, you didn't create this. I've seen this 10 times.
Yeah.
And I literally got to the point towards the end, when I decided that I wanted to go open up my own show, that it's like, don't tell me about any new product. Don't tell me. Don't tell me about any of the problems that you're having. Do not tell me. Because part of what I was always faced with, that when you're the instructor and you're training thousands of technicians, you are front and center, number one to the dealerships. That's who they see as you. And that Monday morning, hey, Frank, we've got these 3 problems. Have you seen this? And do you know what happens when I say the wrong thing? Yeah, I've seen it. That's fucked up. Dude, I have been pulled into a room and been like, Frank, what did you say? I said these 3 things. Why did you say that? Because it's true.
Yeah.
You can't say that. Are we clear?
You know what? Holy shit, that brings me back.
Yeah, you cannot say that.
My fuel injection on my 09,
yeah,
we had a problem with it. I brought it to you.
Yeah.
And there was instead of replace the 08 450.
450. Gotcha.
The connection that goes into the fuel pump, you did that kind of thing. He said, "Yeah, I can't say much on this. I remember these words."
Oh, yeah, I know what the connector problem was exactly, actually.
There's an update for the next year.
And there was, and they changed the clip model because it would break.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's funny
and,
to hear you say that, and it
well,
brings back
well,
that
and I
memory on it.
already knew what the design change was. I was in
Well,
on
you
the.
fixed mine with
Yeah.
some, I want to say, hot glue, some
I
other
don't know.
stuff,
God only knows what I did.
and it never had a problem again.
Yeah.
But it was that or buy a whole new fuel pump and harness and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
that was an unfortunate that what Suzuki did not anticipate there is the frequency at which customers remove their fuel tanks on dirt bikes. They did not, and what would happen when you pulled the tank off and you didn't remove the high pressure fuel line before trying it would break.
Shit, I can't believe I forgot that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy the stuff it'll bring up. But, dude, I want to get you back in again. Finish this other book. We're going to talk about this one. We're going to talk about your new one.
Yeah.
We'll get you back in for that. It'll be really cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a good book. It's sold pretty good. People tend to like it. It's got a ton of info in it.
So, yeah, anybody listening or watching, I finally got it to where now it can be listened. Any of these podcasts can be listened on to the iPhone, Apple Podcasts. It's been broken. I've been battling with the company. They finally, after 20 emails, fixed it. So I checked today. It's not fixed yet, but they said 24 to 48 hours. But it's on Podbean. It's on Spotify, iHeartRadio, almost all the other big ones. Finally on Apple Podcasts. So yeah, give it a listen and download if you're driving to work. Tell your friends about this, please. I want this show to be about your guys' stories as well. So yeah, any other stuff to say?
No, man. No. I mean, we're running late. So.
Oh yeah, about an hour over only.
Gotcha.
Well, thanks again, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, man. Bye.
B, tell me another motorcycle story.
I like Frankie, and because she rode a bike with me on the street.
Oh yeah.
Which is a street bike, and then we had a motorcycle for Frankie to ride on the street. And
By herself? She was riding it by herself?
Yeah, it was attached to the back of it.
What? She did? Oh, okay. She wasn't driving it by herself and riding it, steering it, gabbing the gas.
It was like a pig. It was like a piggy ride. It was like it was like a piggyback ride.
All right. What happened?
And then also we took her to the street bike track, and then we unattached her bike, and then she rode it.
What?
On the track.
By herself?
Yeah.
But she doesn't have thumbs. How did she give it gas and use the brakes?
I gave her thumbs.
You gave her thumbs?
Yes.
How'd you give her thumbs?
I gave her thumbs like I took my thumbs off and I gave them to her.
Did you use like magic, or you just ripped them off and gave them to her?
I used magic and I got pinky thumbs and I put pinky thumbs on her.
What's a pinky thumb?
Frankie thumbs.
Oh, Frankie thumbs. Okay, I couldn't understand you.
So it's Frank.
So Frankie's panky?
Yeah, pinky thumbs.
Any other stuff you want to tell me?
And then there was a fan on the back of Frankie's street bike when we went home, and it had a booster in the middle, and it went super fast, boom, 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 boom. Ah! Frankie was like, ah! He almost flew out of the bike. The end. Bye bye.
You wanna talk about a leap of faith? A half-cocked charade in the darkness. Flip cups and rolling dice. We gave no fucks, now who thinks twice, yeah. And when this whole time slower, felt like it was trying to shake